everything comes at the cost of something. But the cemento, yeah, exactly. The cemento spirit is very much in white's favor, and black needs to create dynamic chances. The move that slightly annoyed me was what Nicholas suggested. Probably it was Computer's first choice, Bishop d6, hitting the knight. I'm not that worried about that knight being hit. For example, let me play according to my heart. Yeah, for example, Queen d2. But here there are some tactics, yeah, like bishop takes b4, c takes b4, and one question that if you would be able to play d4 and after queen d4 check, castle long, but it's illegal. Against a check,
castle on check.
Exactly, that's very important. That's why I wanted to highlight. Yeah, so after.
But maybe you start with long castle then.
Yes, but then I'd set up some blockade on d4 immediately. Yeah, so just wanted to highlight that d4, queen takes d4, and we did see one time there was this discussion that can you castle or not against check? No, the rule says no, and that's why black cannot go for this trick with d4. And otherwise, I'm gonna get some knight f5, hop with the knight to d4, get that blockade, and you don't have the pair of bishops anymore.
This is true, but if black was to go long castle in this position, I don't know if you need to play queen d4 immediately, because I'm looking at knight f5 and I'm already thinking about sacrificing with d4. Is that something that black can consider? Are we able to long castle here?
Yes, I'm trying to find the way to long castle. Bishop d6, queen d2, so you take on b4.
And let's just also inform everyone that this hasn't yet happened in the live position. Nodirbek is in a think after Magnus's c3. I think you take it all the way to a8, Peter? No?
No, it does not permit me. But actually, long castle is here a legal move. Let's just not get carried away that the technology does not let us make the move. It is possible, and in the Nodirbek would probably castle if given a chance. What on earth is happening? Yeah, even the technology cannot handle the pressure.
The freestyle chess. It's not only confusing the players, the commentators, it's not only making us think, but it's also making tech think and kind of make some drastic changes on the usual working techniques here. So while we get everything up to date, let's bring up our live position on the board. Peter, c3 played. We're looking at lines. To me, I'll be honest, Peter, the most natural looking move was knight g6, but pointing at...
Look at it. 100 heart rate for both players. Magnus Carlsen, after move 10 in a strategical position, having a heart rate of 100. This is some sensational news, breaking news. We haven't really been seeing him in such situation. It just shows that how complex the position is. The players are in the dark and we are not exactly sure whom to prefer. They are very much in the same boat.
Yes. And really, I mean, to me, this is such a fascinating position out of the opening. I mean, look at it. All of black's pieces are on the first rank for black. All of them. In a way, not a single piece developed. A crazy pawn structure, an extremely committal pawn structure. You've given up dark square weaknesses. You've advanced your pawns. You haven't taken out your pieces. But in return, you do have this long-term compensation of the bishop pair. And I know that Magnus has a bias towards bishops, but in this particular position with this knight on b4 and the idea of queen d2 looming, the knight jumping onto f5, of course, Magnus's position also has its own trumps. It's just extremely unbalanced, Peter.
Yeah, extremely unbalanced. Nodirbek is taking his time. He is already under an hour. Yeah, he's done to 55 minutes. Normally, he's playing quite fast with a lot of confidence. And Bishop f4 played.
Taking control of the d2 square. It was one of the moves that was on our radar.
Yes, but I saw that knight f5 and then e3. Yeah, that was my way because bishop f4 is the move that I was most worried of right from the start.
And knight f5, you want to hit on the g7 pawn, win a tempo, and then push e3. And to me, again, the big question after knight f5 would be, does black need to waste tempo? Do you need to defend passively on g7? Or, Nicholas, is there a more aggressive approach? Because knight f5 is very tempting for Magnus.
Knight f5 is tempting and good, and it's also, I believe, a very important line. Well, there is maybe the move knight h5, but knight f5 is great. And the importance is not only that you activate this knight, bring it forward, where you also attack the pawn on g7, but you want to play e3 and kick this bishop away and get a better control of the dark squares. And after g6, this is the line we already looked at, very sensible, attacking the knight on f5 and also defending the pawn. Now you played a counter-attack against the bishop, so you really fight for these dark squares, and if black takes on f5, then white takes on f4, and white is really happy to have gained, to have traded the
Peter,
bishop.
what is this pawn structure? I mean, just look at it. Four
is
pawns
a-
on the f file.
Yeah, and it's a winning pawn structure for white. Yeah, it's my lovely pawn structure.
Yeah, in the end, we will get to a position like this. Maybe the queens will be traded or not. And white has a majority on the king side, 3 against 2. And these pawns, they're not as active. They cannot move as easily. They're fairly stuck, inflexible. So this is why white would be better here. And after bishop f4, knight f5, g6, e3, of course, black doesn't have to take on f5. But if you move the bishop back, it is also somewhat saying, well, this didn't go so well. The knight will go to d4. Beautifully placed knights now on the 2 outposts here, protected by a pawn, cannot be attacked by a black pawn. And this is looking very safe, or as Peter would say, cemento for white.
Are you changing sides now, Nicholas? I can sense it.
Yeah. I've been seeing this, and then this very safe position. I would change sides, but I don't want to come across as like a flag in the wind, always changing. So I'm going to stick with flag. I made up my mind. Let's see where it takes us.
I think it's just an extremely complicated position. And looking at Magnus, looking at Nodirbek, it feels like the kind of position that both would enjoy to play, and Nodirbek not at all less than Magnus. While I see the heart rate, it's slightly higher for Nodirbek currently. Magnus down to his usual 80, 88, 89 beats per minute there. But we can feel the tension in the position. Magnus reaching out for the knight. Knight h5.
Wow.
Actually, Peter, I was thinking about this move because this attacks the bishop and the pawn at the same time. The drawback is you're not protecting the e3 square. So actually, e3 is not a threat. And I was thinking that perhaps now black can just come back with the bishop to h6.
Yes, honestly, when I first thought about this bishop f4, yeah, it was my first intuition that if white plays the move c3, black has this bishop f4. And when I saw that knight h5 can easily be met by bishop h6, I felt like I stopped. Yeah, that's okay. I'm not worried from black side in this direction. But then I spotted this knight f5, g6, e3 idea. I immediately got super excited because I felt like, okay, that's very much the essence of the position. But clearly something disturbed Magnus, or he's just believing so much in this knight h5. But okay, I was a big fan of white's position, knowing that we are going towards the center. Knight on b4, knight on h5. Slightly scares me. Besides, yeah, okay, let's put that bishop back on h6.
It's a double attack. Let's defend it.
I think we can afford ourselves to make this move to get a better overview. Let me put it there. Yeah, and how do we continue? What is Magnus's idea? Is he trying with f4? That would make sense from a human perspective, yeah, that to shut the bishop out
But g6,
of
what
the
do you
game.
have in mind?
Well, g6, I
You
might
come
just
back.
fall back. Yeah, I might just fall back to g3, and then queen f2. Already, Nicholas was highlighting this queen f2 at some moment, but there will be some d4 ideas. I'm not liking this, that we are suddenly not controlling the center squares, and
Maybe immediately
yes,
as well.
yes, this is scaring me. So I'm not a fan of Magnus's move, but knowing Magnus and he had 1 hour on the clock, he has something in mind.
You know, we often talk about when you're playing against a player like Magnus Carlsen, you have to create a chaos on the board. You have to bring him out into a situation where there's an opportunity for both players to go wrong, where it's just a really complex fight. And I think that's exactly what's going on right now. It's just a very difficult position for both players to play and respond to. It is once again just going back to that famous forest of complications. Mikhail Tal's forest of complications where 2 + 2 is equal to 5, and the path out is wide enough for just one player to get out. And this position is exactly that, Peter. Magnus playing knight h5, an inaccuracy as we're looking at it. But also, from a human perspective, it's just difficult to make moves here. And I'm looking at bishop h6, and once again, I'm liking black now, even more so than I did before.
Yeah, well, I see one line which...
And we might have one commentator who's again shifting back.
Well, there is one funny line I want to highlight. I don't know exactly the final evaluation of the line. It will be interesting to check it with Nicholas afterwards.
Yes.
That bishop h6, can white play the move queen f2? Because I'm inviting bishop e3. It looks like a crazy move. But after bishop e3, I have this knight take g7 idea. You know, boom, I'm counter-hitting that queen. And queen e7 runs into knight f5. I keep on harassing that queen. And for example, after bishop takes f2, knight takes e8, you fall back with the bishop, but I'm coming back with the knight. However, even this is not the end, because you suddenly have d5, d4, and you are unbalancing the situation. I can't capture because the knight is loose. You're going to go with long castle, then maybe here bishop f5 would be very important, stopping long castle. We have been talking about this theme that castles in the right moment can decide the game in Fischer Random in freestyle chess. So many lines to worry about, but this caught my attention that maybe this is exactly the line that Magnus is relying on.
I want to point out one more thing about queen f2, that you are hitting the b6 pawn. So yeah, I was just thinking if black can start getting tricky and defend that pawn. I don't know how good it is, but yeah, king c7, just giving up the right to castle just doesn't feel like a move you want to make. And then there's, my idea was king c7, queen g3, and at least I have queen e5. But you don't have to give a check on g3.
Yes, and also queen e5, I have f4.
Yeah, it just gets very tricky.
As an
There's
idea,
no need,
yes. So queen f2, very intriguing, and I would like to pass it on to Nicholas just to make sure that what we discussed, is it true or not?
As often, Peter, you're spot on. I was also looking at this move, queen f2. And just to point out, after knight h5, this is the current position. Bishop h6 is the only move, really. Otherwise, black is clearly worse. And I'm wondering what Nodirbek is thinking about, because his bishop is attacked and the pawn is attacked. And the only way to deal with both threats is to bring the bishop back. Of course, you could maybe activate your queen, but you don't want to give up this dark squared bishop. You don't want to have it traded. So bishop h6 is the move we expect. And now queen f2 is quite interesting, not fearing bishop e3, because the lines that you mentioned, Peter, they work for white. Knight takes g7, counterattack on the queen, and white will be a pawn up. So instead, yeah, king c7 is also not a happy move. Queen g3 check, you lose the right to castle. Your pieces are not as harmonized in harmony, and queen e5, f4 also doesn't feel right for black, so probably after queen f2, black should go queen b5 to defend the pawn. Also, interestingly, have the option to go queen c5 to fight for the squares in the center and the dark squares. So queen b5 seems to be the best way to deal with this threat. Still not a big thinking. After knight h5, we expect bishop h6, and then it's up to Carlsen. f4, queen f2, some different options, but the position remains quite complicated.
Yeah, point well made. And I just want to follow up on what you just said, that it is really important for black, I think, to fall back. You said, Nicholas, that it's really the only way to keep the balance. And I think the reason for that, and maybe we should dive a little bit into it, a move like queen e3, which can be really attractive, I don't even think it's about taking the g7 pawn.
No, because it's also checkmate, yes.
Yes, but it's also not just the mate in one.
Yes.
A huge threat, Peter. Point well made. I will be honest, I missed that. But my point was more strategic in this position, that even if knight g7 is possible, I think that still gives black play. But talking from a long-term perspective, if white was to even just get rid of the bishop pair, put this queen on f2, and then suddenly the only thing that stands out in the position is black's pawn structure. The bishop on g8, a horrible piece right now. d4 can simply be captured now. The knight is far away. b6 a weakness, and then all the trumps that you pointed out earlier in Magnus's position, they stay, while Nodirbek's biggest piece, that big bishop, the dark squared bishop, falls off. While I make that point, of course it's true that after queen e3, completely missed the idea. I was only focused on the d2 square. Watch out, there's a checkmate in one.
Well, and you know how happy I was, Tanya, that finally I was the one pointing out checkmate in one, because normally you are the one pointing, I'm always missing that. and I'm explaining all the strategical finesses while there is a checkmate. But yes, it's such a crazy construction. But of course, if white can grab that dark square bishop, then that's an absolutely no-go territory, because we have already compromised the structure. Yeah, we have this horrible c4 d5 pawn structure with all the dark square weaknesses. The only thing that compensates us for that is the dark square bishop. That's the soul of black's position.
Yes.
We have to keep it. We have to guard it.
Yeah, and they say in chess, pawns are the soul of a position. For right now, that bishop is what keeps Nodirbek's position together while the pawns are falling apart. So it's really something where you have to play energetically. As black, you can't expect to just try to keep a positional balance in the position, and that's exactly why Nodirbek keeps that soul of the position alive. The bishop falls back, bishop on h6, defending g7. And now, the big question, will Magnus continue? I think queen f2 is actually a very natural move. You place it on the dark square diagonal, you've got a threat. I really like what Nicholas pointed out. I was, for some reason, trying to defend it with the king. Makes no sense at all when you can actually step it up with the queen, defend the pawn on b6, also place it on a more active square. You always want to try to get the king to castle on the queen side next and dream of a d4 break. If d4 happens, Peter, I think I'll even get you converted over to black's position.
Of course, then I have to design with white on the spot. Yeah, if a timely d5, d4 appears on the board, then black's king is just getting checkmated. Yeah, so you really have to master all these finesses. And the move queen b5 is kind of an annoying move from white's perspective, because black will try to get long castle in, the move that the computer does not want to let happen because it's such a vital move. Maybe we'll have to refresh the board. Let's see if Nicholas is managing to, he's trying, and yes, after the refreshing of the board, at least already Nicholas is able to castle long.
Yeah, so after queen f2, actually another move that the engine suggests, which I was just considering, is to sacrifice this pawn on b6 to play long castle and to focus on playing d4, this push, if at the right moment where Peter has to resign immediately with the white pieces, because suddenly the attack can become quite strong. But this is very sharp to allow the queen so close to the black king. Queen takes b6. Maybe there's also g6 now to push the knight away.
Nicholas, just to highlight that white d4 would run into this checkmating idea from white side.
Oh, d4. Oh, there's bishop f5. Yes, that's why we play g6. Thank you,
Really
Peter,
nice.
for having the whole board awareness here. Bishop f5 check, and after king b8,
Knight a6, knight c7.
knight a6. There's not a checkmate, but it is pretty much the same result. White wins the queen, and black can resign. So that is why after queen takes b6, we have to control this f5 square, otherwise disaster will strike. g6, so I'm not even sure if we're threatening to take on h5 because of this bishop f5 check. And yes, this is really, really sharp, really sharp. So queen f2, it would be, I think, in Nodirbek's style to play castle, but a safer move would be to go queen b5 here. However, first of all, Magnus has to decide if he wants to go for queen f2. What else is he going to do, really? There's f4, there's maybe e3. Well, no, e3 seems to be... we're not sure about that because the pawn is attacked twice. Doesn't seem like there are so many natural moves here in the position, Tanya.
Yes, I'm sticking to what I said about 20 minutes ago. I'm liking black's position more and more, and I'm dreaming
because
about
knight
d4.
h5 was played.
I agree with you, and I think, but it's easy to make these kind of, I mean, if Magnus can make it, really anyone can. Knight h5 played by Magnus, and suddenly he goes into a long think, or has he just made a move, Peter? No, he is
not
still
yet.
thinking.
Not yet.
While this one is fire on the board, Peter, and it's really heating up. We're getting some breaking news that we've got Levon in the confession booth with his math, so let's listen in.
I think the smoke's cleared a little bit, so Fabiano decided to play in a solid way. I mean, I like my position. It should be a tiny bit better because of the bishops. the important factor is that I mean, if he takes on d4, then I should recapture the knight, and if I'm in time to play c3, g3, f4, then his knight on g6 is pretty much stuck. So then, I mean, it should be totally fine for me. I mean, pleasant for me. So I think the next couple of moves are crucial for the understanding of the position. If he manages to develop his pieces and not allow me, to attack his center, then it should be okay for black. But if he doesn't, then it should be a rather pleasant position for me to play. So I'm optimistic. Let's see how it goes.
And Levon there feeling good about his position. This was a confession that came in a few moves earlier. So we have had some developments since then. A structural change that I think, Peter, as you're bringing the board up for us, we do see a set of pawns being traded off. Meanwhile, the d pawn did move forward. And blacks managed to stop that with the bishop on d6. And perhaps we'll just take it from the top and see how we got here. Fabi's managed to castle in the live board. What happened? Take us through, Peter.
Yes, actually very interesting, because Fabiano did play the move after d4 that Levon was revealing us in the confessional booth that he is most considering. Bishop c4, knight c2, and he highlighted that, yeah, his idea is to shut that bishop out if the black bishop is retreating to a6 after b3. So very interesting to see how Fabiano reacted. Knight g6 developing the piece, and after b3, yes, bishop takes e2 check. It's not an easy move, and it's not something that you do happily, giving up bishop in such a position so quickly. But clearly Fabiano has understood that, yeah, bishop a6 c4 is not the kind of construction he's happy to deal with, and he's relying probably on some very quick development. So knight takes e2, queen f7, c4, and here we did hear Levon was mentioning some capture on d4. He did mention, so it should be about this, more or less this position.
When he came into the confession.
When he came to the confession booth, exactly that. What happens after e takes d4, with some kind of ideas that maybe knight takes d4, the ideas like bishop e5, trying to use that pin against the rook on a1, but this is all very committal. White might also just simply capture back with the bishop. Yeah, after e d4, White can capture back with the bishop. There are so many possibilities. In any case, I'm pretty sure that Fabiano was not at all interested in finding out the details of e takes d4. He follows his strategy of trying to evacuate that king as quickly as possible. Let's just cherish this moment one more time. The ugly king from d8 is suddenly finding a way to jump to g8, securing black's king, and white's king is still stuck in the center for a moment, and it's not so easy yet to castle, because the queen and rook, the rook is perfectly placed, but also the bishop is still in the way of going for short castle. So Levon closed the position with d5, and after c takes d5, c takes d5, bishop d6 was the current position that we looked at. Black is very much relying on the dark sweat strategy. White has space advantage, white has the two bishops, but if somehow, yeah, Levon clearly immediately activates the bishop, it's some kind of a Zamish King's Indian structure. Tanya, what is your take on this?
Really well-made points there, Peter, and well taken as well. I want to just push a little bit on the king's safety problem that we're talking about for Lev. I don't believe that you ever want to find that on the queen side with the C line open, the dark square weaknesses around it, potential A5, A4 pushes. I don't believe that Lev wants to make this about a race to each other's king. So the last move, bishop to E3, eventually I do believe we'll see the queen getting out of it, perhaps even to F2, lining up with the bishop along this diagonal, and then trying to get the king to safety on the king's side. Yes, the bishop pair looks really nice.
At first I thought we would just keep symmetrical, but then he played knight b3, and I kind of had the knight is better placed on the interesting idea. I had options right now, like knight takes f5. I like too much simply because of the and I did the structure.
Saw there, that felt like a like a 2x speed of a confessional booth situation there. Vincent there wrapping out some lines, Peter. We're probably going to do a quick deep dive into that. But just to finish the Levon point that we were looking at, and then we'll go to the Vincent game, that in this position for Lev, it's one about getting king to safety, and I think it has to be on the king side. And second is finding a pawn break at the right time. When you've got the bishop pair, you really want to try to open up the position. And I do see potential pawn breaks in the position. I don't believe it's going to be easy for black to achieve f5, but I do think that at some point we might see g3, f4 appear on the board, trying to play on the king side, trying to activate the bishops. Because if not, for black, it's just easy to maintain. You put your knight on e7 and you start doubling up on the c file.
Yeah, there are many strategical ideas here. The very first instinct that I had, yeah, when black played the move bishop d6, that if black would be able to play queen e7 and then bishop c5, for example, yeah, it would be lovely. But things are changing. Yeah, Levon set the bishop up with e3, so he can follow it up with queen f2, making sure that any queen e7 will be met by knight gc, knight f5. That's a big problem that I see in the position for black. So yes, there are strategical ideas with queen e7 playing on the dark squares, but runs into some knight gc, knight f5. One could argue that after knight gc we'll have the move knight h4 covering the f5 square, so the intrigue continues. But there is the other developing move knight c8 to e7 as you highlighted. I wouldn't be ruling out then black eventually going for a quick f6 f5, because yes, you do open up white's bishop on b1 as well after e takes f5, but after e f5 knight takes f5, black would also get that brilliant knight. The pawn on d5 will be loose, so I very much see some big confrontation coming and looming in the next couple of moves.
It's like the calm before the storm, this position. At some point, we will have a pawn break, and that's when the position gets explosive. All right, we will keep an eye out on this one on the Levon board. Of course, it is one of our big semi-final matchup. And Nicholas, I believe that you have got an update for us on the Gukesh Vincent board, a game that we haven't been able to catch up on. Maybe you can take it from the start and tell us what happened here.
Absolutely, Tanya. We just heard Vincent in the confession booth. So here, just like in the game between Aronian and Caruana, we saw e4, e5. Now knight g3, also Aronian's choice, f6. But yeah, in f3, this is the exact same position as in Aronian-Caruana after 3 moves. However, here, what did Caruana play? Did he go?
Played c6.
He played c6 instead. Here, Vincent's broke immediately in the center of d5, maybe a little bit early, but it put pressure on Gukesh, who didn't react in the best manner. He also played d4. Now there's a lot of tension here in the center. Knight g6 was played, e takes d5, sorry, not e takes d5, knight b3 was played, knight d6, c3, knight f5 forward. Wow. Alright, let's just get to a current position. What is happening with the knight jumps here? Knight c4 hitting the pawn of b2, the pawn of g7 this attack, and now queen c3 is played. And I'm not sure, Peter, if you remember what Vincent was saying about this position, because it's not in my mind anymore.
Yeah, well, we unfortunately heard only the first part of Vincent's remark, and he said that, yes, he decided to play e4, e5, and the key move was that after knight f5, clearly he did not want to take on f5, because after e5 he would have nowhere to go with the knight on g6. So yes, white does put the pressure on g7, but he was kind of happy to have find the way of counter-striking against b2, Tanya's favorite spot. Yeah, you target my weakness on g7, I'm gonna do the same to you on b2. A razor-sharp position, and Gukesh has made the move queen c3, which is a very logical move on one hand, because you activate the queen, protect the pawn, but look at that bishop on b1. It doesn't feel like this bishop will be entering the game in the next couple of moves. Clearly white is hoping for some very quick short castle. That's the only way of getting white's king into safety. So much tension, so much intrigue. It's only move 7, and I believe now I want to reveal why we are not having any games really passing the time control, because we already have incredible action after move 7. How do you survive the next 10 moves here? We are not talking about endgames. Yeah, we are seeing some crazy openings and some madness in the middle games.
What endgame are you saying? Not a single piece, not a single pawn has been traded off, and it's just starting to heat up. Move number 7, players are under 50 minutes on the clock already, and that's exactly what freestyle chess is about. That's exactly why Magnus Carlsen is such a fan of this format and why he wants to play this in the classical time control. It just takes so much of a player's skill and creativity from the very start of the position, and we get fresh ideas on every board, even though the starting position is the same one on every board. So it's definitely a format that we've come to love. And Peter, we've got some great news for our audience as well, that the organizers are looking at expanding freestyle chess into a full-fledged year-long tour with several tournaments across the globe. So it's only going to get more exciting from here.
Wow, this is shocking news. It's fantastically shocking news, brilliant news. I'm very happy we are enjoying every second of it, all this thrill, all this adrenaline rush after a couple of moves, yeah? Nobody is safe, no matter if you are world champion, you are world number one, you are facing the same challenges, same craziness.
Peter, I've done so much commentary with you, but I think I've seen you most excited about this format.
Okay, it can't really get more exciting than this, yeah? All this intrigue. Otherwise, we know exactly that mostly the top players know what's going on, yeah? You have your preparation, you have your understanding to rely on, yeah? But here you have nothing. You only have your incredible skills, which, however, because every position is something special, you can never really make any general conclusions. You have to adjust yourself to every single new challenge, and that's Magnus was coming here. He said, okay, it's crazy enough in a normal chess to play normal game plus tie breaks, but in a freestyle chess where you have to think from the first move, okay, he was basically dead, yeah, he was just completely exhausted.
And yet you could see that how much he's loving it and how much he's enjoying it. And it's also, he said he wouldn't mind a double round robin classical format. So the more freestyle, the more fun for all of us. Now, the one position that's also very difficult to understand, but a lot of fun, is happening at this very moment on one of our semi-final matchup, the big one, world number one Magnus Carlsen taking on perhaps one of the biggest young stars of the chess world, Nodirbek Abdusattorov. He's 18 years old. He is the youngest world rapid champion. He's an Olympic medalist, and he's been on fire in this format. I feel Fischer Random freestyle chess really suits Nodirbek. We saw him in the 2022 Fischer Random World Championship as well, Peter, where he was knocked out in the semi-finals against Hikaru. You were commentating at that event. He was so impressive throughout.
Yes, absolutely. I remember because he beat Jan Nepomniachtchi in kind of 4 games in a row in the group stages. That's completely crazy because Jan is always some special beast in this format. Yeah, that was also a fantastic tournament. I was commentating. I was just recovering from some health issues there, probably from COVID. And I was with every day I was getting more and more joy and happiness covering the event. And by the end of the event, I was already completely recovered. So I have extremely beautiful memories.
Chess is therapy for you.
Yes, absolutely. And freestyle chess, because we don't have to write engine lines, engine preparation, we do get some extra help, and it's fantastic because it's so complex that without the engine we would have terrible difficulty navigating all the madness that we are seeing here.
All right, and we're seeing a lot of madness in this particular position. Magnus, we're seeing all of that in this particular position right now. Peter, since we left it last, Nodirbek has managed to go long castle, and that means the threat of d4 is a big reality. It is coming up. It's something that Magnus needs to think about. It just feels like he's one move short of getting his own king to safety. Are you still team white here?
Yes, I'm believing in Magnus. Let me put it that way, because
what if Magnus was playing black?
Yes, the point is that, yeah, I was telling you that if d5, d4 comes, I'm resigning, right? But Magnus, for some reason, felt like, you know what? Let's just go back to bishop h6. Magnus did not play the move queen f2. He played f4. That was the other reasonable move, shutting out black's bishop, a more natural one. Long castle happened, and now yes, d5, d4 is a big threat, but if Magnus is calm enough to just react to this threat by bringing his knight back from h5 to g3, this signals to me that after d4 he's relying most probably on a check on f5, and after king b8 he wants to castle himself. Yes, it's permitted, and all of a sudden, yes, okay, you got d5, d4 in, but I'm also safe with my king. Yeah, one could argue that, okay, what happens if you kick that bishop away with g6? The bishop might have to fall back all the way to c2, maybe to e4 as well. It's possible because the knight is protecting that bishop. It's another craziness, but the good news for white is that look at that knight on h8. It's a little bit far, and if it comes to f7, then it will block the bishop on g8. I feel like this is the argument in Magnus's favor.
And this is what makes it a little uncomfortable on the king side for Nodirbek to play the move g6. The only reason I'm not a fan of the move g6 is because it takes away this key development square. And I'm just wondering if instead of that, can black actually play more actively? So if you just go back one move, Peter, right here, is knight g6 something that does keep the pressure on? I really don't care about you taking the d4 pawn. I do see that it's perhaps not the most accurate move, but I'm still asking questions on f4.
Yes, absolutely. It's perfectly justified. Yeah, it's a very concrete move. We are hitting on f4, and if I'm not really happy of giving up my bishop on g6, I don't want to do that. Yes, so what do I do? How do I protect that pawn? Can I jump back with the knight to h5? But okay, this is very strange. I already played knight h5, I came back to g3, now going back to h5. This is all artificial. Wow, okay. It's
tricky.
It's a crazy position, yes, absolutely. But it's all eyes on Nodirbek. He's down to less than 40 minutes. We are only move number 13. Wow. We will be seeing some crazy time trouble. That's already guaranteed.
That's 27 more moves to make. And Nodirbek under 40 minutes on the clock. Nicholas, what's your take on this current position that we have? I think it's the most exciting one of this round right now. The ideas that we're looking at, is d4 the move to go for black?
It is definitely a position that can explode into action at any moment. You feel like it's a calm before a storm. d4 is certainly a move that is on Nodirbek's mind here. You want to open up the d-file against the white king. The king has to evacuate as quickly as possible. The line we're looking at, bishop f5, check. So you get the bishop out of the way so you can play the long side castle. In freestyle chess, long side castle or short side castle is possible, but you cannot have any pieces in between the king and the rook, just in normal chess, and they end up on their usual standard chess squares. For a long castle here, queenside castle. And now, once again, there are different options. Black could bring the queen into e3, but white blocks it with queen d2. Knight g6 is possible. White would need to give up the bishop here against the knight. But then you alleviate the pressure, and maybe also this bishop on g6 is somewhat, on h6 is somewhat taken out of the game. And white is actually a bit better here. I was also looking at another move after knight g3, which is to play g6. I think it makes sense in a way. We take away the f5 square, but you guys mentioned already we want to have this square available for the knight. However, one thing I want to point out, we're always looking at queenside castle, but there is still the option to play kingside castle as well, to go queen f2, hit the pawn on d4, hit the pawn on b6, black goes d4 again, and now suddenly
wow,
the king goes to this side of the board. Watch out!
That.
Yes, and maybe Nodirbek might forget about it as well. And here also the king is fairly safe, and this king feels a bit loose. So different options: g6, d4, maybe knight g6, and Nodirbek is taking his time.
He has just played g6.
He has made a move.
Yes.
He has played g6. We might get down
Wow.
this exact line of queen f2 and short castle.
Just incredible full board awareness to remember that there is another side of the board, and even though you've gone f4, g4, you can still get your king to safety, and it is perhaps more safe over there because look at this bishop, it's lined up with the queen side. The d4 breaks in the air. The more I think about it, the more short castle does make sense to me, Peter. And we do have a move on the board. It's g6. At first, to me, just felt like that's the square that you want for the knight. But Nodirbek instead taking some squares away from Magnus Carlsen. Are you a fan of this move g6? What do you think about it?
Well, g6 is perfectly sensible because of this bishop f5 check long castle idea. So the reason why black plays g6 is to hinder white from going long castles. And okay, if Magnus does the magic with queen f2, d4 short castle, and then goes a4, a5 and checkmates that king on c8 with thanks to the a1 rook, that would make perfect harmony. I'm already so excited. I don't know. Luckily, there is no equipment checking our heart rates, because you know, whenever I hear something like short castle changing the character of the game and being completely unexpected, that just drives me crazy.
Well, there are two ways, right, to do this. If you want to go long castle, you're looking at bishop c2 and then get your king to safety on this side. If Magnus wants to go for the short side castle, he steps in with the tempo and then gets his king to g1. I'm thinking about an idea that we discussed earlier, that perhaps after queen f2, Nodirbek can start looking at moves like queen b5, eventually putting a rook on the open e line, and maybe even try to trade off the queens at queen c5 at an opportune moment. And we've got a move. It's neither. It's a different approach. It's a third approach in the position. He brings in e3. Wow. All right, let's just have that on our board. So really blocking this bishop, but this is so committal, Niklas.
Well, cemento, right? You want to stop d4 altogether, solidify the pawn on f4, but the engine is not a big fan of this move. Maybe it is a bit slow, because you still need a move to be able to castle and bring your king out of the center. So queen d7 makes a lot of sense to hit the pawn on g4, forcing white to lose another move. h3 now maybe line up on the e-file, put some pressure on this pawn on e3, maybe bring the bishop back to f8 and c5 to further increase the pressure on the pawn on e3. And I think it's really about timing here. If white is able to bring the king to safety, maybe somehow put a knight on d4 as well to further stabilize and consolidate his position, then certainly white can be better. But Nodirbek will try and use the time he has to put pressure on the white position, especially this pawn on e3, and pose problems to Magnus. Tanya.
Yes, you're calling it a cementer because it takes control of the d4 square, but for me, this is such a committal decision and a long-term point that can be put under pressure by Nodirbek. I think Magnus is playing with fire here with this move e3, and I loved that bishop retreat that you were pointing out. The bishop on h6 on this diagonal has done its job. You always try to find more active squares for your pieces, and imagine if that bishop reroutes to c5. Peter, things can start getting extremely dangerous. And while Nodirbek is thinking, I want to take this moment to bring up our bird's eye view to check in with the other action. Last time we checked, Ding Liren was in big trouble. And Peter, these are the 4 boards that we've got on. And while it looks like Ding is still, he's down a piece. He's managed to grab some pawns though. That's the 3rd board from the right that we see.
Wow, it's some strange stuff, but I don't believe in his position, because I simply still have this final position, or this position in mind that we last left, and I did not see any chances for him, and I have big faith in Alireza handling all this situation. Evil bar also is hardly seen from the white side, which basically indicates that white is in a lot of trouble, which is no surprise.
Yes, we see the king on g1. That's Ding Liren's king on g1. Also under fire, that bishop on c7 looking good. Evaluation bar gives a clear advantage to Alireza. He's up a piece. He's the one who's pushing for the initiative attack against white's king. Meanwhile, on our extreme right board, Vincent making progress in that position. Again, the opening up of the d-file. Black's knight on c4 looks extremely active, targeting that b2 pawn. We can perhaps even look at some queen trades that might happen along the d-file if white was to capture the d4 pawn with the queen. Let's move on to the other side of our screen, where Levon Aronian continues to have that slight pull in the position. He's got a good pawn structure. He's got the bishop pair. He needs to find a way to break. Peter, we've been looking into the Magnus board because it's been the most exciting one. Where do you want to quickly jump into? Should we actually do a quick deep dive into the Ding position? As we see the eval bar giving a clear advantage to Alireza. Maybe let's just break it down for a quick moment.
Yes, before we jump in there, let me just highlight that, in fact, Nodirbek has played the move Queen d7, the move that Niklas has pointed out as being Computer's main choice. So we might be seeing the Rook f8, Bishop h6, f8, c5 maneuver, which was sensational stuff. But it's also a very human way of, you see the target, the e3 pawn is a weakness, the bishop is not doing anything. You also see that the knight from h8 has nowhere to go, so it does not have any priority of going there. and to be activated immediately. So rook f8, bishop c5, very much in Nodirbek spirit. We're gonna get back to that, but for the moment, yeah, let's take a quick look at the Dinglian's position, because he might be just crushed on the king side. He does have 3 pawns. Yeah, let's get that position on our big screen. And the last move from white, what was it? Yeah, wow, and now black played the move knight b6 to d5, setting up the trick. C takes d5, knight takes d4, queen d4, bishop b6. Show it, Tanya, please.
Yes, let's have it on the board. What a way to bring the pieces into the attack. You take my knight, I'll take your bishop, and sure, take my knight, I'll take your queen. Get that pin in, and that's the point of that extra bishop on the board. The extra piece really shows up. Knight d5. Peter, it's a winning position, but a really nice way to wrap it up, to try to get your final piece into the attack. If you don't capture the knight, not only are you hitting on b4, you're hitting a fork on e3, you're hitting the f4 square. This is quite the move to finish things off.
Yeah, it feels like the final knockout punch. Yeah, it looked like white was already about to lose the game anyway, but knight b6 to d5 gives also this tremendous pleasure. Yeah, that you bring that knight, which seems to be out of the game, and let's just go back one move. After knight f5, white has played the move c4, trying to make sure that the knight on b6 is kind of shut out of the game. The only hope that white has, and let's just highlight that, for example, moves like knight takes h4 was possible, winning a pawn, but after queen takes h4, queen takes g5, at least we trade the queens, and yes, we are piece down, but look at that rook on a3, the knight on b6 out of the game. There is some hope of putting up some resistance from white side, and Alireza says, you know what, you wanted to stop me from playing knight d5, then here you have it, I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yes, and I mean, it's already a very difficult position. You're down a piece, you're not the one who's pushing the pawns. The 3 pawns that you're pointing out, they don't really have the mobility because your king is on g1, your knight on g5, so very hard to imagine the h-pawn actually ever creating anything. I actually think this might be resigns very soon. Yes. Because there's a huge threat on the board, and with that final piece, the extra piece coming into the attack, even this black rook is doing such a great job. I mean, I'm looking at this position and I'm wondering how it even got there, Peter. Yes. How did this rook get here? What was the maneuver?
Well, actually, this rook was the one that collected the knight on h5.
Yes.
And then it started its journey just very quickly, without any commentary.
Just do it, yes.
Let's just enjoy all this craziness. Yeah, so white actually won the piece. Black won the piece. White is playing without a piece, but trying to create some confusion. But not against Alireza. Rook takes c5, the rook starts its journey, rook a5, not afraid of anything, castles, knight b6, the knight is developed, rook d1, yeah, we already have an update, yeah, I think cd5 happened, so very quickly the rook finds a perfect place on a3, sits there, targets the c3 pawn, and yeah, slowly, step by step, we get to this position, knight f5, c4, knight d5, white captured cd, black captured on d4 and the dark squares. It's of course white will not blunder the queen, but it's not about blundering, it's about losing the position, because there are no hopes, no hopes here.
And I think it's clear that Ding is just completely out of shape. I believe that he perhaps even missed the idea of c4 and the fact that knight d5 is still possible. Yes, it's already a difficult position, but again, it comes back to that early stage, the move knight h5. For someone of Ding's caliber, that is elementary. For someone of Ding's strength, like, you just can never imagine him going into those kind of lines right out of the opening. And this just looks like Alireza has just made all the perfect moves after that. This rook's journey to the end of the world feels like it's going to be the end of the game for Ding Liren. A trade on c6, the knight on d4 cannot be picked up. And I believe you don't have to recapture with your knight. You can just leave the knight there and maybe just go b takes c6 anyway. Keep that knight there. You can't pick it up. The pin on b6 is devastating.
Yeah, and already played by Alireza, it just shows that he knows that he's completely winning. Yeah, if you keep on answering your moves like this, it signals tremendous confidence. You know that, yeah, there is no reason to see any ghosts. I'm the one delivering checkmate. Look at white's rook on a1 is completely out of the game. The rook on a3 participates in the attack. keeps the initiative. The knight on d4 is a monster. The bishop on c7 is the winning piece because the dark squares and all these knight e2 checks, knight g3 checks, some rook h8 might also happen. The rook on g8 is already doing anyway a good job, but maybe even the h4 pawn can be targeted. There are some ideas like knight e2 check, bishop g3, rook h8, and then checkmate on the h file right away. The d3 pawn is hanging. I would say that it's not too early at all to design this position. It would be absolutely justified, but knowing how disappointed Ding is in how things are going, most probably will continue the battle, but it's totally hopeless.
It's hard to say anything for White's position. Ding trying to trade off the queens. At least if the queens were to come off the board, if there was a queen takes e4 and you try to just connect your pawns, you try to improve your pawn structure, 3 pawns versus a piece gives White some hope. But I don't believe Alireza will ever trade queens.
Exactly, can play just queen d6, yeah, and eyeing queen h2 check as well. The diagonal, everything is hanging. Queen e4 probably was the absolutely only move. I also haven't seen any other move. Now, Alireza taking his time, he slows down absolutely correctly, he has 43 minutes. Why should he rush at all? He's completely winning. And also some ideas like queen h5, rook take g5, and then, but probably you don't need those kind of adventures. Yeah, the position is completely winning. Why to calculate any crazy lines at all?
Yeah, it's been difficult to watch Ding in this tournament. There's just been, it's tough to say anything about it, and he's got a world championship title to defend soon.
Well, first the candidate tournament is coming up, so there will be tremendous pressure on the challengers, and queen d6 on the board.
One of the candidates is sitting across him, Peter, right now.
Yes, Alireza is one of the candidates, and I think already by having had that experience from the previous candidates that will come in to have very big impact on Alireza's new candidates, because I think he has learned so much. And one of the things that I feel like there was way too much pressure on him. Yeah, he was just very young, 19 years old. Magnus Carlsen was highlighting him as already his main challenger and so on. I think he just has to focus on what he does best, play chess, forget about all the speculation, who is the favorite, show his best, and then he certainly will have great chances.
Yeah, when you're going to play the candidates to get that spot to fight for the ultimate glory, the world championship title, and you're playing against the world champion, getting in a win like this also is a big confidence boost. Well, he's not only on his way to take down the reigning world champion, but also did win the classical game, the first classical game against Magnus. Even in the Chessable Masters Grand Final, he took down Magnus in a set. So Alireza has been having some great performances of late. He's definitely feeling his rhythm. Let's jump back to Nicholas. We have this position on the board, king to f1 played. Do you see any miracles happening at all in this game, Nicholas?
No, I was already looking at another game because this is in the books. This is over. Even here, you can go ahead and still play queen h2, even though it doesn't come with a check, because if White was to take on d4, then you can respond with bishop b6, and again White has to give up the queen, because if the queen moves, there will be a checkmate in just 2 moves, queen g1 and queen f2.
And resigns from Dingley then.
Resigned, yeah. And it's
after queen h2.
Queen h2, and that's it. Firuza takes the first point here in this mini match with the black pieces. Of course, that makes him a big favorite to win this mini match against the world champion, since he'll be playing with the white pieces in the next one. It's usually, or as far as we've been seeing it, it's been easier to play with white. Actually, this is the first win with black we see in the classical portion of freestyle chess. So very convincing win by Alireza, taking control early in the game, seeing the tactics, winning the piece, and converting it. Very clean win by him.
Ding has to bounce back in the second final classical game to take it into playoffs. That will happen tomorrow. But this was an Alireza show from the start, with Ding going early on with his knight jump, eventually losing that piece and losing the game. Let's head back to our big fight. Fire on the board, as we've been calling it, since pretty much move number 2. And we do see that that the last move by Nodirbek, queen to d7, we've had some moves since then.
Yes, and then rook f8 and bishop f8 is on the board currently.
He does it. He finds it. But Peter, after queen d7, we had queen e2 defending it, and you were saying that he did play this maneuver. I really like this concept, and it just shows high-class chess by Nodirbek.
Okay, this is what we are already expecting from him. Yeah,
Yes.
anything less would be a complete shock and a surprise, but because what he has shown so far in this tournament is really stunning. This regrouping was the good thing for him was that this is a human kind of regrouping. Yeah, we did see Nicholas highlighting this magical queen f2 short castle kind of idea. The reason why I felt like Magnus might find it, that we have seen him already playing twice this crazy short castle against Gukesh in the round robin, and then later on against Dingley Ren. So he very much has this short castle idea in mind, but here it was too hidden. It was simply not on his radar, and right now if that bishop comes to c5, this will be practically dangerous. But Magnus goes b4.
And fight it.
Yes, fighting for the c5 square, so that's why he retreated his knight to c2. It was already a prophylactic move, going back with the knight to c2. And look at this. Nodirbek is feeling that this is an extremely critical moment.
That shift in body language, you could just see it. And I think it also implied, at least to me, it felt like it reflected that he feels he's in driver's seat now. The move b4 is very committal by Magnus. He's made so many pawn moves in this game, placing them, starting with e3 as well, f4, g4 on the board, and still not finding that king safety. The bishop on c2, the drawback of the move knight c2. Now you need to spend some tempo trying to open up that bishop. But the biggest question for Nodirbek is, does he keep the pawn chain, the pawn structure as is, or go for en passant? Peter, that's a double-edged blade, because sure, you get bishop c5 at some point, you get the b4 square, but you're opening up a key A line. And before I throw it over to you to break down this decision and which one do you prefer, I just want to highlight the journey of this bishop. You said it's a standard idea that Nodirbek probably was easier for him to find, also because this is the starting position of the bishop in standard chess. You already have this concept of getting the bishop on c5 in so many king's pawn opening. In this particular freestyle chess, it started from the square b8, went on to f4, went back to, not to h5, but went back all the way to h6, found itself on a standard chess position. I'm still going to get my arrows in. Found itself on a standard chess position, wants to go to c5. Magnus Carlsen stops it. En passant was too dangerous. Bishop e6 coming in with a tempo and an attack on g4.
Yes, and let's not forget, White's king is still stuck in the center. So yes, as long as the center is closed, one can argue that it's more or less safe, but let's not get fooled. It cannot be safe forever. Bishop e6 eyeing the g4 pawn. If White plays something like h3, Black might follow it up energetically with h5. Then clearly the question will be, is White in time to jump with his knight to d4? Does this give us enough stability or not? I would also like to highlight one of these typical ideas in this type of positions. When you know that your opponent wants to occupy the d4 square and that will block the d file, somewhere the stunning sacrifice of going d5, d4 is also something to think about and to talk about, because there are all kinds of craziness coming up after that. I don't yet see the final blowout, especially after bishop e6, because I want to highlight that I was also trying to make sure that I can use the e file, yeah, the pin, so something like d4, knight takes d4, eventually bishop takes b4, check, then move the queen, then rook takes d4, ed, rook take the queen. But all these ideas were looming there, but move per move, they were not yet working as far as I understood.
And en passant in that position is definitely a move you don't want to make, opening up that white's rook on a1. But let's just show that to newer chess audience, that here you can actually trade. Well, d4 was the line that you're pointing out, knight takes pawn, and these tactical ideas are always on the board, something to watch out for. Queen a4 check, bishop lines up, hits the queen, and I don't know if you have time for everything, because in the end the queen on a4 will be hanging. Exactly. But definitely tactics in the position, and these concepts maybe doesn't work right now, but in another position, in another couple of moves, this is something that the players have to calculate. Meanwhile, Peter, bishop e6, and the other move that we were discussing was h3. I think h5 is such a natural response to that. I don't think you're in time with knight to d4, because that move e3, I want to highlight that point that after h3, h5, if white jumps in with the knight to d4, black might be in time to take on g4, and if you take with the pawn, happy to grab it back with the bishop. If you put an intermezzo with knight e6, you recapture it with the queen, and suddenly that weakness on e3, it just falls apart.
Yeah, and look at the body language. Magnus is not happy at all. Not happy, which is very understandable. Bishop e6 hitting that pawn on g4 and setting up this h5 break highlights that white's king is still stuck in the center. Yeah, just one extra move, king d2, would give white so much extra stability. And then all these lines that we just have seen would maybe kind of be safe enough for white. I'm really worried. And we might have to hand over to Nicholas to understand, because Magnus had foreseen something, he's calculating something, but what is it? How can he limit the damage?
Well, let's have a look together. The pawn is attacked on g4. You cannot allow that black just takes it, also painting the queen. So you have two options. h3, which Magnus just played, or I was gonna say real quick, the move f5. So h3 and h5 immediately by Nodirbek, which was not the best reply. The computer would have preferred maybe to go f5 here, put pressure on the pawn in this way, and also opening up this diagonal. So h5, and now Magnus has to go f5 here. He has to go f5 because, as you were saying, knight d4 might run into h takes g4, or maybe even h4 followed by f5, and this knight doesn't have a lot of squares to begin with. You don't want to put it back on h1. Actually, after h takes g4, there's still this move f5. White really playing on the light squares here. Quite fascinating. But after h5, what happens after f5? I'm wondering, what happens here? f5, hitting the bishop. If you take this pawn, well, I have different options. Okay, I'm not taking back, so this is also where we're trying to understand what the engine wants here. So white is not even taking back, but playing knight d4, for example, or taking this pawn on h5 with the knight and then hitting rook and queen. But knight d4 quite powerful, because this diagonal, there's trouble coming up for black. For example, h takes g4, now knight takes e6. We trade the defender of the f5 pawn, and suddenly the bishop from b1 comes in, and it's a huge pin along the h3 c8 diagonal, and white is in excellent shape. So I believe that maybe Nodirbek playing h5 so quickly missed this idea that after g takes f5, white doesn't have to take back neither with the knight or the pawn, but can play a move like knight d4, or take this pawn on h5 and go for this pawn on f6 as well. So after f5, he needs to draw back with the bishop to f7, and I'm wondering if this has really helped him now to provoke white going f5. Peter, what do you think?
Wow, this f4, f5 idea is a game changer. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Obviously, Nodirbek certainly missed something, and I'm also wondering, yeah, and no, Magnus goes knight d4. He misses, and
immediately the line that we were talking about.
Yeah, h take g4 played, but we already know that f5 is possible, and white is having everything under control. So that's why Magnus was not looking for some special way like with f4, f5 to be even more precise. He feels that thanks to this f5 move, let's even just highlight it with the arrows, thanks to f4, f5, white will get the stability, and if black is unable to break everything, yeah, I think already
it's on the board. F5
on the board,
now.
yes.
What is Nodirbek's reaction? Did he see this move coming?
Well, he's at least...
From a human perspective, I think it's very easy to miss f5 in this position, because you're only looking at trades. I also, speaking of human perspective, I just want to back up for just a moment. In this position, Niklas pointed out that the best move is f5. How ridiculous is this? I mean, how do you even find this move? You're blocking your own bishop. I'm sure there are a lot of trumps. And the biggest one might even be that suddenly we'll see this bishop on g7 at some point. But f5, Peter, who makes this move, right?
Yeah,
So hard.
It's a computer. Yeah, a computer makes that move. He does not care at all because
really need like no blood in your system for
yes,
this.
and then the argument could be that f5, g5. Let's just have it
Yes.
on the board. Okay, bishop can go to g7, but also very importantly, the knight from h8 has perspective. Knight f7, knight d6, heading towards e4 or b5 squares, depending on the situation. And all of a sudden, as so many times with the engine's suggestions, once you see them, it makes sense. But why didn't it cross our minds? Because it's so unhuman.
It's completely out of your understanding looking at this position. h5, just the most human move on the other hand, is given an inaccuracy by the computer because of the lines that you pointed out. And once again, you can't really fault Magnus for missing the move f5 with all these complications. It's so hard to also with white find this move. Yeah, it feels like black had to play it, then white had to play it, and it's only an engine that can make these moves on the board. But Magnus does find another way to stabilize. He goes in with the knight to d4, and after h takes g4, what was the accurate move instead of taking the pawn then? Was there something better for black, Niklas, here?
Yeah, instead of taking on g4 in this moment, which Nodirbek blitzed out, which is honestly a bit surprising to me. Both h5 and h4 were immediately blitzed out by Nodirbek. He could have played h4, forced the knight into the corner. Well, there's also here again the move f5. But in this case, you can take on g3 and now, well, you can sacrifice the exchange.
Yes.
Also, this is quite computerish. But you can
No, this is human. This I would say it's human. I would sacrifice it immediately.
Immediately, because you also have this pawn on g3 and you get rid of the strong knight. You can support the pawn on g3. This is much more understandable, at least, than the other line. So this is one option, and the other one would be to go back. And here, once again, for you, Tanya, the move f5 would be quite good.
But once you play h4, then I think you already have f5 on your radar because you're then already thinking about this move. You blocked up the h file, and this would have kept a majority of the advantage, or at least some advantage for Nodirbek.
Honestly, it's a bit difficult for me to evaluate. I see the computer is saying black is a bit better here, but after g5, also position is very much locked up. So I would probably evaluate it as about equal. Both sides have their trumps. Black has more space, but white has this nice square on d4 and maybe a potential break on the queen side, whereas black doesn't have any breaks. In either case, this was the way to go for Nodirbek. Instead of taking on g4, now after f5, he is under a lot of pressure. I believe he has to drop back to f7.
Yeah, he already played bishop f7 and h take g4 played by Magnus.
All right, it has been played already. And now you once again, you're stuck with this knight on h8. You don't have any squares, so the square on f7 is blocked. And I was thinking, well, maybe bishop d6 makes sense to hit the knight and activate the bishop. But white can simply defend it. Let's say queen f3 looks sensible to me. And what do we do about this guy on h8? This is quite...
Actually, can I have one question? Instead of
Yes.
bishop d6, bishop h6, hitting the e3 pawn, does that make sense?
Rook f3 probably, yes.
You
Rook
can
F3.
just cement it.
Yes, it's all very safe. And the next moves are clear for white, probably bishop c2, long castle.
Okay, so
or
rook
maybe put the
e5,
king on
rook
d2.
e5, rook d8, yeah, trying to triple down on this
Five.
e3 weakness. But you will have some timely fg and occupying the f5 square, I guess, yeah?
It doesn't look that easy to me. I mean, rook e8 is coming in
It's
next.
coming, yeah.
Yeah, the computer is completely unimpressed, wants to go a4 for
Oh
some
my
reason.
God.
I don't really understand at all. But let's just go ahead with rook d8. And now knight f1 would be possible, or to take on g6 and to free up the square for the knight and defend the pawn in this manner. So for example, bishop takes, bishop f5, bishop takes, knight takes, and
Yeah, beautiful.
it's all cemento.
Incredible
Very much.
lines, absolute chaos, but we do have a move, so
Queen C7.
instead, yes.
Yeah, queen c7, similar idea to hit the knight on g3, but white can play rook f3, queen f2, and it all seems fairly safe. And if white can consolidate further, maybe he can take over, because this knight, if this knight was on d6 or anywhere in the game really, or maybe even on e5, completely different story, but on h8 it's out of the game. Black is playing without a piece right now.
Yeah, I would like to go back very quickly to this moment, rook f8, when we were highlighting that, yeah, wow, sensational stuff by Nodirbek, bishop f8, bishop c5 coming, and then the prophylaxis, yeah, that Magnus came up with, this brilliancy, Yeah, just simply falling back, anticipating, and he's already making his move because it's not natural.
But you're highlighting a really
Yes,
nice
I
point.
will highlight. Yeah, I will
Yes.
jump back there just not to miss out on live action. Yes, so Queen F3, beautifully protecting that knight, stabilizing the position, and it is very tough spot for black. White is simply better now. But let's just go back to this and appreciate this stunning move. Knight b4. The knight on b4 was such a monstrous piece before. But again, situation changes. You need to adjust to the new situation. Knight c2, bishop f8, and then b4, b2, b4. Humanly stunning. We do see computer is not impressed, but these are the moments that we want to highlight because this is human chess at its best. The game
Really is.
Yeah, it's
And not
just
from
fantastic.
one side, from
Yeah.
both sides. From both players, even Nodirbek's plan of rerouting the bishop, exceptional. Magnus finding the resource against it changes the dynamic of the board completely.
Yeah, and finds the way of stabilizing, cementing the position. Yeah, because just one thing falls apart and things, and then also this to see that f4, f5 will give me the stability, so I'm not worried of this. I also feel that Nodirbek, because we talked about it, he's playing so well, he has so much confidence, but maybe here the too much confidence comes back to haunt him. He should have spent some more time.
But Peter, he's already under 25 minutes and there's
Yes.
still 20 moves. It's not as if he's rushed his decisions the whole time. I just think that it's a complex, difficult position. He did find the bishop f8 maneuver. And I don't even think the player still evaluates this as something that's so clear for white.
No, but I think that Magnus is, if you ask him or he would go now to the confessional booth, he would say that I'm very happy. Finally, I have things under control, yeah, because it wasn't clear at all if he will be able to manage to control everything.
Yeah.
When you look at this picture, then every single decision that Magnus has made in this game makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's like a symphony. It's all connected. He's very happy, and Nodirbek needs all his crazy skills to create some complications here.
It comes down to that point that we've been making, right? Just
Yes.
black never got that d4 in, and white managed to put a really strong hold on that square. Now d4 is never happening, and the worst part is that how do you challenge this knight? I'm trying to look for a way to actually start getting this knight to c6. It would be a completely different
Yes.
game altogether. And there was this one game yesterday where Winston's queen from b8, it just never got into the game. And I fear the same destiny for this knight on h8. It's still a far way off from getting into it, and we see a move on the board. Nodirbek plays bishop to g5, so still no future in sight for this one. Is he trying to target this knight on g3 given the opportunity to pin it? Maybe even try to win it.
Yes, I think that his idea is that somehow with bishop h4, rook g1, bishop g5, he tries to
repeat,
yes,
maybe.
to force some kind of repetition. Yeah, for example, if I just plays a
Let's show it,
passing move,
like a
bishop
bishop
c2,
c2.
yeah, then bishop h4.
Only move to defend this knight.
Yeah,
Or one of the more natural moves,
yes.
let's say.
And then with bishop g5, we keep on in this. You could, of course, argue that you can maybe afford even to play knight f1 coming back to protect, because with white, if you feel that you are better, then you certainly don't want to. But it's an ugly move. You don't want to make an ugly move. You also don't want to take somewhere fg and then try to put your knight on f5, because then black's knight joins the party as well. Yeah. So there are still so many things. Bishop g, I'm loving it. Yeah. Bishop g5 was the move that was required, and Magnus is not happy.
It's like he's challenged at
Yes.
every spot. In every move, Magnus has to answer new questions. And I think that's also something that Magnus really enjoys playing against this younger generation. Whether it's Alireza or whether it's Nodirbek, he knows it's going to be a grand fight.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because Magnus probably felt like, okay, I have mastered everything. I have found the
Main
perfect
position.
harmony. Yeah, leave me alone. Yeah, just give me 1-2 more moves to play according to my feelings. Yeah, for example, a4, a5, opening up the a5, targeting black's king, eventually giving the chance of going rook a2 and then bring that rook on the second rank into play. So it's not even clear that we need to castle at all. Yeah. There are so many, but bishop g5, bishop h4 hits you in time.
So impressive. And again, coming to the journey of this bishop, Peter, it's been shuffling around the diagonals at the right moment. First from b8, it jumped all the way to f4, fell back, went back, aimed at this square. That didn't happen. It comes back. It comes to g5, heading to h4. It's been the star piece in Nodirbek's gameplay. The
Yeah.
MVP, the most valued piece.
Yes, absolutely. Basically, after with c5, c4, with this committal decision right in the opening, when he provoked or forced Magnus to give up his dark squared bishop, ever since we talked about that white has the d4 square, black has the dark squared bishop. Yeah, these are the dynamic factor. And the big question is who will benefit at the end of the day. And it's still the game is very much on.
Nicholas, what do you think? What are the chances of us getting a repetition with the idea of bishop h4, bishop g5?
I think the chances are fairly low because white has a way to avoid it and still fight for an edge. Actually, the move a4 is really attracting my eyes, and Peter mentioned also already, to involve this rook in one way or the other via the second rank, or by going a4, a5 and opening up the a file and getting to this king, which is already quite exposed.
On the board, just played by Magnus.
Yeah, a5 looks strong, and after bishop h4, rook g1, bishop g5, white can defend this pawn by going knight f1, and a5 will be next. Still no play really for black. Yes, it looks a bit ugly. Yes, it's not the ideal setup, but at the same time, there's no way for black forward. You can at least take now an f5 without a knight coming there, at least not this knight from g3 coming there. But alright, well then the bishop takes, a5 is played. There are really some dark clouds appearing around the black king with the opening of the a file. It can get sharp. Knight g6 now, the knight can come into play, but it seems that the white king is safe on d1, even though it is standing there since the beginning of the game. So right now, Nodirbek to play after a4, and the pressure is on. Time is also getting lower. They only have this time that you see until move 40 when they get another half an hour plus 30 seconds increment per move. Right now they don't have any increments, so that's all the time they have for another 16 moves, and this might be very dangerous for Nodirbek.
And I think majority of those 16 moves are going to be critical decisions to be taken in this position, because Magnus, making his intentions clear, he's going for play on the king side. He wants to open up that a file. I think the first critical, well, not the first out of the many that we've had, but the next important moment, I am expecting Nodirbek to continue with his idea of bishop h4. After rook g1, Magnus needs to show his cards. How ambitious is he feeling about his position? How much does he feel that he has the chances to try? Because that will really give away his mindset. Does he go back knight f1, or does he come back with the rook to e1?
Yeah, I feel that in any case, Nodirbek needs to play the move. No,
he's going for something else.
He takes on f5. That's surprising. Okay, so it means that the bishop h6 to g5 move was also based on the fact that after gf, knight takes f5 will not hit the bishop with the tempo. And he clearly wants to activate the knight. So if knight takes on f5, black will jump with the knight to g6 instantly, and then rely on this knight e5 tempo hitting the queen, and eventually that knight may be going to d3 even if it comes at the cost of a pawn sacrifice, but we change the character. We don't need this c4 pawn at all. Yeah, we need some counterplay, we need some files to operate with.
Very interesting. And of course, Magnus once again can jump in, take with the bishop, just for the tempo, so that once you move the king, the idea that we've been discussing with Nicholas earlier, he gets that tempo in to get a5, and then it becomes a bit of a race. Is Nodirbek's knight in time to get into play? Should we deep dive into that position a little bit?
Yeah, let's do it.
Peter, because bishop f5 or g takes f5, two options for white. G takes f5 also has a lot of credit to it because you do take away the g6 square, but potentially you're opening up a big square on h5 in the future at some point. So we're looking at this line, and how do you react to the move a5? Do you jump in with this knight to g6? I want to get my knight. Let's bring in knight g6.
I'm gonna jump immediately.
We jump.
I'm trying to understand. So what happened? Yeah, so Magnus was not at the board. Okay. That explains it. So g takes f5 on the board. There are 4 ways to recapture. No, 5 ways to recapture on f5 after g takes f5. Just to highlight that once again. The bishop takes is a check. There is an argument to be made for it because it comes with a tempo. G takes f5. The argument is that we keep that knight out of the game on h8. Knight g takes f5 makes perfect sense because also we are activating that knight from g3. Knight d4 to f5. No, it does absolutely nothing. And queen takes f5 is also a very strange move. So
Yeah.
basically we are dealing with 3 different logical recaptures, 2 we can eliminate. And I'm very curious to see how quickly Magnus will make up his mind, because that will signal that is he so confident about one certain capture, or is he now battling deep inside him with all the tempting options.
I want to point out that G takes f5 might also, with the process of elimination, be something that white might not be too keen to make, because the bishop actually lines up on the pin.
Yes.
And we might even see a transfer of the rook from the e file to the g line. And this starts looking very scary for white.
Yes, yeah, basically this is then absolutely no-go. So G takes f5, we
So
can...
we're down to 2.
Yes, 2, and then maybe already then bishop takes f5 is more logical, because knight gf5 allows this knight g6, knight e5 with a tempo, and a5, knight e5, it gets very murky. We do see computer does not...
Yes.
Yeah, he takes with the bishop.
takes
Yeah.
with the bishop,
That was
so-
a long move. It
And
has to...
this was our conclusion, what you were coming to, Peter.
Yes, that was clear that, yeah, bishop takes f5 check, and of course the good news for Nodirbek is that king b8 is totally forced. Yeah, one more move closer to the time control, a move that you did not have to waste any second on. And now it's up to Magnus to decide what to do.
It just feels that Nodirbek's next move is an easy one. It almost feels as if regardless of what white plays, black wants to play knight g6. Of course, ideas of bishop h4 also need to be kept into mind. And once again, a position for all 3 results. Anything can happen here. It's going to be a time scramble, and I actually think the clock is going to be a very critical factor in this one.
For sure, yeah. Also, Magnus is not having so much time. Yeah, it's now easy to fall into this trap that white has a nice position, white has everything under control. If that knight gets to e5 with a tempo, then suddenly the knight on g3 will be loose. Let's not forget that the queen on c7 is eyeing that knight on g3. So if the white queen will try to cover the d3 square, yeah, queen e2, then some knight d3 jump, and after the trade on d3, the knight potentially will be hanging on g3. So I see many questions here, a5 being clearly the most natural move, trying to go after black's king. And there might even be some ideas like a5 and then somehow get some other heavy piece to the a file to threaten some rook a8 checkmating ideas. But it's easier said than done.
Very fascinating position. I mean, it's been a very fascinating game from the very start, from the decisions by both players. I mean, I'm just loving this action. I'm at a loss, and I think it's really the moment to take in what we're seeing. And look at both players, both head in hand, both know exactly how complicated this fight is, calculating down all these variations. Magnus trying to understand what happens after knight g6, after bishop h4, how quick he is on the queen side. All these lines are going through his head right now. And he's got to keep one eye on the clock. He can't afford to burn too much time right now, because it will come back to haunt the players later on. They're just getting close to move 40. Still about 15 moves to make in this position, Peter.
Yes, it's very complicated. The tension is growing.
It really is.
Well, the tension was there from the beginning, but yeah, now with the clocks ticking down and both players sitting there, one can just look at them, forget everything what we are saying, just please take in. Yes,
yeah.
and rook e2. There we go. The rook is getting ready eventually, maybe somewhere to go to a2, getting out of this bishop h4 pin, but it does give black one extra tempo, yeah? So now I'm pretty much sure that knight g6 will be kind of blitzed out. Knight g6, knight e5 is what we are hoping for. Why did Magnus really believe that he has the time?
Do you think Magnus is thinking about not letting that knight survive and then perhaps plant one of his knights on f5 once it's taken? Because I would be terrified to allow this knight to come into e5 and d3, Peter.
Yeah, especially, yeah, knight g6
we're
blitzed
gonna find
out.
out.
Yeah,
We're gonna
because
find out.
the point is that after rook e2 there are no good squares for the white queen on f3.
Yeah.
So that would be very awkward. Magnus might also make his move quite quickly, because I believe with rook e2 he's following a clear strategy. Yeah, so
Do you think he's going to take? Or
most probably, yeah. It makes perfect sense. Takes knight. On the other hand, giving up both bishops and this bishop on f5 is a monster. Before we were talking that black's main problem is that his knight on h8 is out of the game. Suddenly we trade a monster for a terrible knight. I'm also confused.
What are these dynamics? 2 bishops versus 2 knights, beautifully placed knights versus beautifully placed bishop. This is one of those positions of good knights versus good bishops.
Yes, and I feel that it's dynamic equality. I don't believe that black has to worry about this. Some rook e4, queen e5 kind of possibilities are in the air. You're not going to checkmate me. You're not going to... And here we go.
He does it.
He takes on g6, but it shows that Magnus is not that confident that this position is so overwhelming.
Let me just bring that up to date. We've had some trades, Nicholas. We're talking about these different dynamics that have just changed, and the knight jumps into f5 exactly how we were expecting it. What's your breakdown of this, and have we been on track with our perspective here?
Yeah, absolutely. The last few moves were going in Nodirbek's favor. Magnus made 2 unfortunate decisions in a row. First, taking with the bishop on f5, that was still fine, but taking with the knight, also taking any ideas here out of the position with counterplay against the knight, and then following up with a5 would have been quite powerful with a strong attack for white. And then after bishop takes f5, king b8, rook e2 was too slow, a5 immediately would have been better, and after rook e2, knight g6, bishop takes knight g5. Peter said it perfectly. This is dynamic equality. Black can put a rook on e4 now. Black could also take on f5, play then rook e4. But rook e4 is just a move you just want to make to hit this pawn on g4, to increase the pressure on e3. And as Peter was saying, I mean, a5 can be played, but it doesn't seem like there will be a checkmate anytime soon. So this has gone really well for Nodirbek in the last few moves, and the position is balanced with both players getting slowly into the time scramble, and this is definitely a position for all 3 results, Tanya.
The position is dynamically balanced, but I still think draw is the least likely result in this one. I'm going to predict another decisive game here. These are, well, now 3 games. We've had a decisive result on the Ali Reza board. Ali Reza winning against Dingler, and with the black pieces needs a draw to keep in the competition, to keep fighting for the higher spots. Meanwhile, we see that it's Levon Aronian who continues to push against Fabi. We're seeing the pawns roll up the board on the king side. On the other hand, Gukesh struggling with the white pieces here. Look at that piece activity. That knight on e5, a beautiful piece. The queen on b4 that Vincent has planted. And that bishop on g8 on the king side. All eyeing really key squares. Looking good for Gukesh. Looking good for Vincent in that one. And we've been diving deep into the rabbit hole of Magnus versus Nodirbek. What a game it's been. And as it heats up and we're about to reach time control really soon, we will go into a short break. Get those refreshments, come right back. We'll see you in just a few.
Day 4, marking the second day of the quarterfinals at the Freestyle Chess Greatest of All Time Challenge in Weissenhaus, has begun. It's now more crucial than ever for the players to muster all their energy to advance to the semi-finals.
The outcome of the tournament is still very open. Players are very close to each other. Everything depends on, maybe on one day the one player is playing very good, or the other day the other player is in a better shape, so you cannot really predict who's going to win at the end.
This tournament is not only unique because of its exclusiveness, but also wants to make chess accessible and interesting for everybody, and not only the chess community.
It's amazing to be here and to meet all these amazing players. I can see how they play, their movement, and how they plan. When I finish my experience here, I think I will be also a grandmaster of chess. Kidding.
Today, once again, Fabiano-Caruana secures a victory against Gukesh Domaraju. Nodirbek, Abdusatorov, and Ding Liren are playing to a draw. Levon Aronian wins against Vincent Keimer.
I absolutely love it. It brings the excitement back in the game of chess, I think, for most of us. I mean, even when I was playing badly in the start, the rapid section, I was still enjoying it immensely.
Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja have the same score and are playing a tiebreaker. It's the most exciting game of the evening. In the end, Magnus, the greatest of all time, makes it into the semi-finals as he defeats Alireza Firouzja.
It's absolutely exhausting, but I think that's the way it's supposed to be. Chess to me is mainly a sport, and it's not supposed to be easy on the players. But it's really hard. It's really hard work.
And once again, an exciting day at Weissenhaus draws to a close. Be sure not to miss the semi-finals at freestylechess.com. 3 questions on Levon Aronian. Why is rest so important during the tournament?
It's a very demanding game, especially, freestyle chess, where you have to think from move 1. The pressure is always there, we're not used to that so much. So we love this, but it's very stressful at the same time.
What do you like to do before and after an important game?
Before the games, what I mostly do is, maybe play some bullet games, solve some chess tactics, walk around, listen to music. So generally something light, because I believe that preparation should be done before the tournament starts.
What advice do you give to young chess players?
The most important thing to remember that those best players in the world are not really some aliens. We're all simple people. Just we worked hard, and we loved the game, and we had good advices throughout our career, and we were willing to sacrifice a lot of things in our life. So it's important to have this understanding that you cannot do everything. If you want to become a world champion or a very good chess player, there are some aspects of your life have to be dedicated to this goal.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. It's game 1 of the semifinals, and what action we are being treated to, especially in a game between one of the jacks and the king, Magnus Carlsen. We've also been discussing these are very cool stuff, and we've actually got a surprise for our chat at some point, which we will be revealing, that these are actually playing cards, special edition, signed by the players at the event, and we're going to be having. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up later. Right now, we're getting straight back into the chess, Peter. And there is a very big moment in the Gukesh versus Vincent matchup. When we left it last, it felt like Gukesh was in a bit of trouble. Showing a quick review of the position. What's going on here? Why does our evaluation bar love Vincent's position so much?
Well, I think you already have been highlighting it very nicely during the bird's eye view. And yeah, we do know that there is a very big game between Magnus Carlsen and Nodirbek, but things have settled down a bit. and before the big time trouble phase, it's a good opportunity to look around. And Vincent goes knight d7. Wow, that's kind of an experiment. We wanted to highlight, I believe, together that the knight on e5 was such a monster, and then that knight falls back to d7. There is this incredibly nasty pin on the white queen on e3. How does white stay in the game at all? Isn't this game over? It does look like it is game over, and probably should hand it over to Nicholas. Is there any way for white to fight here?
I don't think so. The knight is pinned by the bishop, so you cannot take, you cannot move, you lose your queen on e3. The knight is attacked 3 times by the queen, knight and bishop, only defended twice by queen and bishop here. The only move to defend again would be to play b4, but this doesn't help you at all, because black simply takes this pawn is pinned, and you really haven't accomplished anything. So the only other move which you could maybe consider is to play, well, I don't even know, bishop a2. No, the knight is just taken, queen h3, pins the knight, but also leaves one defender less for the knight. We might as well see resignation after knight d7.
Yeah, queen h3 happened.
Queen h3, but now if the bishop takes c5.
Bishop a2 now.
Bishop a2. And here you
queen
can take an a4.
Yeah, and you pin the rook.
You pin the rook.
Well, one pin and another pin. Yeah, Vincent takes, bishop takes c5, and after bishop a2, queen takes a4 will be played, and that's then game over. Yeah, that's it.
And for Gukesh, it's been really tough because he had this great start in the round robin in the first 4 games. I believe he finished the day at 2nd position. He was in 3 out of 4. He lost the first game, then won 3 back-to-back. Really good chess shown on that day, and then struggled ever since. Peter, there's been a switch around in his performance in this tournament in a very big way, and it seems to not be working for him anymore.
Yeah, now he played the move bishop a2. Yeah, it was
down
the
a piece?
only move, but yeah, queen takes a4 just ends any kind of hope. White is also unable to castle. Yeah, there are no tricks because long castle would actually do absolutely nothing. The a2 pawn would be, a2 bishop would be falling, and there is no mating idea on d7. So it's basically game over. Talking about Gukesh, he has lost quite a lot of games. At the same time, Vincent, if he wins this, he will be overall in a +3 score. Yeah, playing a fantastic event. But that yesterday's game, that one move in the very first move against Levon, cost him the knockout, and he is now only able to fight for the 5th place at best.
That's $15,000 up for grabs in that one. But these youngsters, of course, it's big money also fighting for. But give them chess at any point. Give them any sport. Yesterday, I was playing foosball with them. And they're just so competitive. They want to win regardless of what's going on, what's at stake. And I believe queen takes pawn is on the board. And there we've got the prizes at the Freestyle Chess Go Challenge. It is the top prize of $60,000. That, of course, the players in the semi-finals are eyeing right now. But even the last 4 spots on 5th position, you go back with $15,000. So very cool paycheck there. And we see some traps being set up. So Gukesh still trying to be tricky. These youngsters are extremely tricky. It's never over till it's over. So trying to set up some tricks against this knight. There are some pins on the board that Vincent needs to deal with.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there is absolutely no pressure on Vincent. Yeah, he can even play a move like rook a to a6, bring that rook into the game, setting up maybe some bishop e6 retreat, because the queen will be hanging, but the white queen is also hanging on h3 at the end of the line. The bishop on c5 will be hanging,
Ooh, nice.
and bishop e6 immediately as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a stunning move. All the ideas that you wanted, but you wanted them in a cemento style, but Vincent does it in the most concrete
manner.
manner.
Actually, I have seen bishop e6. What I missed, I saw that after queen e6, queen takes d1 check does not work, but the a1 rook is hanging and the handshake. That's
Gukesh
it.
resigns. Let's just quickly show the tactics that exist in this position. If white captures the rook, black takes back, sure, take my bishop, but the pin is off. Black ends up with an extra piece. After bishop to e6, the line that you were pointing out, you can take the bishop, you lose the rook, you lose the game. And it was handshakes. Gukesh, he's struggling with his form right now. Vincent strikes back after losing to Levon. We will quickly move on to our live action, and I want to check in with the Levon Fabi board, Peter, our other big semi-finals matchup. And it looks like Levon, just from the start, has had this strategic advantage of the bishop pair, of the pawn breaks that we were earlier talking about. It's happened. F4 on the board, a pawn stomp on the king's side. Meanwhile, that knight on e7 struggling to get a good post, finding a stable square.
Yes, however, when you look at this position from a human perspective, with a human eye, and you see the evaluation bar claiming that white is clearly better, I just don't understand it. Yeah, it has to be combined with some very special continuation, because that beautiful bishop on d4, that's kind of a monster. Yeah, it's wonderful, and Levon goes for f4, f5. Wanted to highlight, yeah, very important to shut that knight out of the game with the last move, Queen h7. Actually, Fabiano has set up a position of pawn sacrifice. Give black one more move. Let me just okay, white makes a terrible move. Yeah, a4. Black goes knight g6, hitting the pawn on f4, and after f5 with very big happiness we jump into f4. After bishop takes f4, e takes f4, we are so happy. Yes, maybe there is bishop takes a6, but I just want to highlight that, yeah, this bishop on d4 and white's horrible bishop, these are strategical ideas for black. Levon says, I want none of it. Let me just go f5 immediately. And where is that knight ever heading to? The c file, yes, black does have the c file, but white's pair of bishops, bishop on d3, bishop on d2, make sure that there are no empty squares in the position, and slowly but surely probably Levon will go rook f3, rook g3, queen g2, or even not rook g3, queen g2, h4, rook to h3, and if white gets g4, g5 in, it will be a massacre on the king's side, a typical King's Indian kind of attack. So yeah, Fabi in a very tough spot, and down to less than 5 minutes.
Fabi in big time trouble, a difficult position. But Peter, we have to head over to Magnus versus Nodirbek. I have my eye out on it, and it's also extremely chaotic. So we will perhaps jump into this as Fabi is down to 5 minutes, but I want to get your update on this, because if we just back up, I actually checked in with this position last. And here, there was a big threat of rook a8, so rooks have been traded. A lot of trades have happened. But the knights, they're proving to be quite the force against the two bishop. That pawn on b6, taking a lot of control of the black position. The king inactive. d5, a long-term weakness that can always come under attack, forcing black's rook to passivity. Is white the only one who can push in this position?
Yes, probably. There are also some ideas. I'm seeing some knight b5, bishop takes f5, knight c7. For example, if black plays rook h8, but maybe black will still be able to run with the king to c8. Luckily, there is a rook h2 intermezzo check. Very, very important. I
want to highlight that idea just as what it means. Bishop h7 a non-move.
Yes, but with rook on d8, it does not work.
Yes, because you just...
Yes, because knight c7, king c8,
and your king runs. So we need to make rook h8 to highlight this point, and your point is that...
Yeah, rook f8. Yeah, we have to play rook f8 in order to highlight what I was saying, that what a tricky position it is. Rook f8, knight b5, bishop takes f5, knight c7, rook h8 check is a checkmating threat, king c8, and now we pick up the rook.
Yes, and the reason you wanted f8 and not h8 is because there might be a check, which is an intermezzo.
Yes. So immediately all these kind of the things, but going back to the very start where, yeah, and he played the move rook e8, yeah, makes perfect sense. The rook is protected in the very same line.
I'm going to show it, the difference, Peter.
And there is rook takes e3 check. No, rook takes e3 check first.
Yes, but also the point, because it's hanging. So rook takes e3 and your king just escapes.
Yes.
So he finds the right way, but still there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, there is this b6 pawn. This is such an annoying pawn. Yeah, the black's king is always in a mating net, and intuitively, this move 28, queen e5, I was intuitively saying rook e4, queen e5 was to my instincts the most natural way of playing. Going for this queen trade, I think backfired. Now with pawn on b6 and this knight grip on f5 and d4, Magnus is in control.
Yeah, I'm looking at ideas of attacking this d5 pawn already, rook to a5. Perhaps, Niklas, you can back up and actually just quickly show us how we got here, and then tell us how does white actually break through in this very nice looking position.
Absolutely. So we last left it around here after knight g5. We were saying Nodirbek is probably happy how the last few moves went, but then he took an unfortunate decision. As Peter pointed out, queen e5, queen e4 is what he played. He should probably keep the queens on the board, play either rook e4, bishop takes f5 next. He wanted to trade queens, but after a5 here, the immediate queen trade was also unfortunate. He should not have allowed a white pawn on b6, restricting the black king. So instead he could have taken on a5, let's say, and then play this idea of queen e4. That would have been perfectly fine, and the endgame should be equal. So quite an unfortunate choice here for him, going queen e4, because after queen takes, rook takes, a takes b6, this was all fairly forced. Now there's the checkmate threat on a8, and well, king c8 would not really help that much because the rooks still come in. White trades, brings the other rook, and now we see the power of the pawn on b7, the pawn on b6, the pawn on b7 will drop, and the pawn on b6 will decide the game. So instead, after rook e8, Nodirbek had to trade a pair of rooks, which he did. And we end up in this position, rook e8, and this is a critical moment because the only way to keep an advantage is to play rook h1 here to occupy the h file.
And to stop rook e5 probably, yeah, because there is this rook e5 idea hitting the knight.
Rook e5 is the problem.
Yes, exactly.
And after rook h1, the rook cannot really leave the 8th rank, or at least if it does, then you always have to be worrying about rook h8 check here. Maybe knight d6 is even stronger, but you don't want the rook coming in and putting pressure on the king. So after rook h1, there are no entry squares as of now on the h file, but there are ideas maybe to regroup the knight, maybe play the knight to g7. It's also a question, what does black do? You cannot activate the king because you run into a fork right away with knight d6 against the rook and the king. And then what else do you do? What else do you do in this situation?
Yeah, it's Paketovic. Yeah, this is the Paketovic. Yeah, nothing moves. If we could jump with the king from b8 to d7, everything would be okay, but we are boxed. We are completely boxed in, and Paketovic means completely boxed in chess slang. So if Magnus finds rook h1, I'm very worried for Nodirbek.
And Magnus has 8.5 minutes on the clock, but it's just about finding this one move. And also really nicely pointed out there that black actually does have a threat in the position. Rook to e5 is Nodirbek's idea to unclamp all the pressure that's there. So Magnus has to fight back. A critical moment because there's a big difference between the best move and the second best move in the position. Rook h1 gives a big advantage to Magnus. Any other move, he loses all advantage.
Yeah, but the good news for Magnus is that you always want to hinder your opponent's idea, right? You see that, okay, I'm basically the reason why white is so happy acted and black cannot do anything. Yeah, so black has these two beautiful bishops, but they don't really do anything. And then if we know that rook e5 is the threat, then stopping it makes so much sense. After rook h1, can you do some magic, Tanya? Because I wouldn't be able, but maybe you have grabbed the mouse like this with such determination like I've had. Maybe you have something, some hope here.
Yeah, I'm just trying, like you said, you need to free your king, right? You have to find a way to free your king. And I was thinking, all right, what if I walk away from this fork by moving the rook? But the point is then you walk away and walk into another fork on e7. So it really doesn't help you. A move like rook f8 doesn't help the cause because king c8 will still walk into knight e7. Peter, let's follow through with this line.
No, but forget about the line. Look at Magnus. I'm not understanding that. Is Magnus suddenly so happy with his rook on a1 that he's not considering rook h1? He would normally blitz it out. His body language does not signal that he believes that he's like almost winning.
I don't think I've ever heard you say forget about the line. I don't think that's ever happened. So definitely Magnus's expression is something that we should be focused on. He's going to find rook h1.
Yeah, but look at
Magnus
this.
Magnus is not going to miss this.
But he's done to... Yeah, and he moves it.
Of course he does.
Yes, okay,
Of course he does. All right, so what was the problem with rook e5? Because after rook h8, there's still rook e8.
Yeah, but rook e5, there's this nasty tactic with knight d6, and you cannot stop. You can hit me on e3 with a check, rook e3, but I go king f2. And then rook h8 is just a deadly threat.
And you can't stop it. There's nothing. The e8 square is under control and this is busted. This is game over for Nodirbek then.
Then okay, then maybe the reason why Magnus was so bored that he thinks like, okay, that's it. I have it in the bag. What's the excitement? I'm going to go rook h1. I still have 6.5 minutes on the clock. Wow.
All right, process of elimination. We can't move the rook on the f8 file. You can't move it up because of this knight d6. If white gets knight d6 in control of the e8 square, rook h1 is a threat you can't fight. So then we just have to sit with black. How do you just sit with black in this position? How do you just wait? I'm going to just wait with a move. It's hard.
It's very hard.
It's very hard because there's also knight. But maybe I don't have to be worried. Oh, all right, I wait with rook f8.
Yes.
And immediately it's a mistake. Is it knight e6?
Yeah, maybe knight e6 and then knight d6. The knight tango is.
I gotta
is
show
that
this, Peter. But now.
Bishop e8. No, I thought you take on b6. You did not take on b6. Eliminate that
Maybe
pawn.
then yeah, but maybe I have to, yeah.
You have to, yeah, but it runs into
And
so
Peter's
many.
saying take this pawn instead. You end up losing a couple more. Yeah, this is bad news all around. Rook h1 on the board. Magnus Carlsen doesn't miss it. No surprises there. Nodirbek needs to find a way to just keep the position, but we're struggling to find a move here for black.
Actually, one has to say that what an unfair position. Yeah, it's material is equal. Black has the two bishops. There are no entry squares. Black to move. And Magnus can even afford... No, but bishop f8, knight f8, it's also... Knight takes
But
f5.
maybe I have to do it, Peter, because I just cannot allow knight e6. I mean, I'm just trying to think of a move to keep the game going.
But how do you... It does not really...
All right, I move something.
Okay, but then rook h7 and finish. Yeah? It's just... I'm entering. Yeah? It's, if I play rook h7, it's game over. No, basically after rook h1, it's game over. And this is so unfair to Nodirbek if he thinks like, wow, why is it? Why am I sitting on the black side in this position?
And there's just no way that you can get out of this position. How do you improve? The rook on h7 clamps down the king on b8. Your rook is never leaving the 8th file. The
and
bishop
after
has
rook
no
d8,
targets.
I even have the deadly knight d6 tactic as well. Yeah, just
knight d6 is actually a big threat on the board as is, and you're saying rook d8 doesn't help either. Knight jumps in because back rank. Hello, checkmate, goodbye.
That b6 pawn, yeah, the monster pawn. That's why b takes a5 would have been so important, but probably Nodirbek was worried of some concrete action. Yeah, he misjudged this position. From a distance, it was so easy to fall into this. Yeah, it looks like, okay, everything is more or less normal. There is nothing happening on the queen side. Yeah, so all these knight b5, knight c7 tricks he had foreseen with rook e8, and then rook h1, and he's down to 6 minutes, and there are no moves.
And you can have an hour on the clock, and that's the point, that every move worsens Nodirbek's position. The thing is that this is the ideal setup he wants. The best move is pass, but that's not possible in chess. You move this bishop from g6, the rook enters to h7. You move this rook anywhere, the knight goes to e6, or there's a back rank checkmate. The king has got no stop because of knight d6 coming in. The bishop on g5 has got no squares. It's a zugzwang for Nodirbek.
Yes, yes. Humanly speaking, I absolutely see no way of continuing. The Vidusi Revelation Bar is not screaming that it's borderline lost, yeah, but if you ask me, I have nothing to tell you. And the reason why I don't want to include Nicholas yet, because I want to see Abdusattov's reaction, right? That before we already know that, computer said that this or that is the right way, the only way to play. Because Nodirbek has to make a move in a couple of moves. Yeah, it's a couple of minutes. It's impossible. He only has 5 minutes left.
Peter, don't get mad at me, but is king e8 really the only move in
I was thinking about it, but it runs into so many problems. I'm thinking about some bishop f4. Yeah, trying to play bishop f4 using the pin. But probably it will lose. Maybe it loses to knight g7. I'm really worried that it loses to knight g7.
I'm just going to quickly show that. You can't take because the e3 pawn is pinned, but this does allow knight g7. The rook is overloaded. It needs to keep the e3 pawn pin, and it needs to keep the h8 square under control, the back rank under control as well. Wow, rook h1.
The silent killer, yeah, this is the silent killer. You just don't see it coming, but if it hits you, it's too late. I don't see a defense.
And Peter, should we just quickly run through the moves that happen for
But we
everyone
don't-
who's
but
just
we don't
joining
have-
as Nodirbek's just thinking, just without any analysis?
Okay.
And this is I'm just going to quickly hand it over. Just, Peter, if you can go through how we got here, because we felt that the two bishops right about now give Nodirbek some chances. So A5 happened, and for everyone who's just joining in.
And then look at the nervousness, yeah, because Nodirbek is such a fighter. He always finds the sources, but there is nothing. This monster pawn on B6.
B6, you can't allow that.
That's the game changer. That's why things are falling apart. And Rook takes G4. He felt like he eliminates that protection on the F5 square, on the F5 knight. It should be enough, but no, Magnus sensed it, and there we have an update.
We have Rook to F8. This does allow in the move knight E6 as we were analyzing.
And look at this. Magnus is not even writing down the move because he already sees, isn't this losing by force?
There is a force sequence of moves. The Rook will be out of squares, or you end up losing big material. Maybe with just arrows, we can quickly point out the line we were looking at. Knight E6 is the move that we want to make. Nicholas, are we on the right track?
Well, I think the line you were looking at was knight e6, rook e8, knight d6, but there is still the square on g8 available. No, it's not. Also not a good choice. Anyway,
we might be going back rook a1, rook a7, or rook a1, knight c7 checkmate, yeah?
Yes, yes. So let's see this. So here rook takes e6 is rook h8 check, which is still the best that black can do, but after rook g8, even knight c5.
Wow.
It's just
Oh my gosh,
are
knight
swarming around. Knight d7 is threatened,
Rook
and then
A1.
come from here. And if you play rook d8, I still play knight d7 check, and it will be checkmate either on the a rank or on the a file. You can choose here. Rook takes d7, rook h8 check, and Magnus is clearly sensing that this cannot be the way to defend here. Bishop f4 was one option. Bishop takes f5 followed by bishop f4, but honestly the engine, like, I played through a few more moves and it seems to be all lost anyway if you go deeper into it. So after rook f8, knight e6 is a choice, but also to start with knight d6 is also very, very attractive, because you
all eyes on
can
Magnus. He's
still play
about to
knight
make a
d6.
move.
Knight jumps into d6. He
Knight
starts
d6.
with knight d6.
Yes, and these ideas connect to knight e6, knight c5. There's no stopping them. The bishops are somewhat useless here on g6 and g5. Magnus is going to take this first game, Tanya.
Full board domination by those two knights, and not only restricting the black rook but also the bishop. Imagine those knights coming in on e6, d6, the rook jumping on from h1, but we might even see it deliver a mate back on the a1 square. Meanwhile, Nodirbek's forces, the bishops and the rook, completely helpless right now.
Yeah, completely. We just can't give any advice. We also see the evaluation bar now confirming our feelings like this is borderline lost. Back rank issues, everything, and look at this, the two knights outclass the two bishops, yeah, because of this special pawn structure. Yeah, this is, let me highlight, it's all connected with this c5, d4 pawns structure. White has this monster knight on d4, and the other knight find the way also to jump in, join the party, knight d6. Knight e6 is about to be delivered. There is no time left for Nodirbek, but it's not about time at all.
The recurring theme in today's matches has been knight retreats. Peter, we saw it with Ali Reza as well, making that knight retreat, winning on the spot, eventually ending up a piece. Vincent did the same, pinning his opponent's knight with that knight retreat to d7. Magnus's knight c2. Sure, this looks really beautiful, but that's when this entire situation started. That knight from b4, when it went back, the pawn from b2 taking control of the c5 square. And then just this masterful play by Magnus, jumping around, giving up the bishops at the right time. And it comes down to that critical mistake of Nodirbek allowing white to trade on b6. But Peter, what a crazy game it's been. Easy to miss. And right now, Nodirbek down to a minute and a half on the clock. And it doesn't matter. No matter what time he'd had, it was not going to be enough in this position.
Yeah, not at all. It's basically impossible to find the move. And he's just getting crushed in the next couple of moves. Yeah, knight e6, knight c5, and then this knight d6 checkmating idea. It's just unbelievable that we see the move, we see the threat. We have 2 or 3 moves to time to figure out something against
and that's it.
handshake.
Nodirbek resigns. There's nothing to be done. Magnus Carlsen takes the first win with the white pieces. An absolutely crazy battle. Insane from the start. Super complicated. But the world #1 prevails. The old god stays strong.
Yeah, it was a stunning positional masterpiece. Yeah, this I feel like it really deserves an applause, because so masterfully combining all the forces, and finally when you look at every single picture of this game, it connects. Yeah, it simply connects, and whenever this happens, I feel, you know, that yeah, this was a stunning game.
And it was so stunning that the players, they want to analyze, they want to get into the depth of it. And we've seen Magnus Nodirbek have these big fights, these complicated battles. And there we see them finally leave the board. And it was at this moment that it got decisive. Peter Nodirbek had to not allow A takes B6, either take on B5 or find another move, but just never allow white's pawn to land on the B6 square.
Yeah, on the other hand, his decision was absolutely just, understandable from human perspective, yeah, that his king is getting into danger, so let me trade the queens and then my king will be safe. Yeah, it's so easy to think like this, but no, there was no escape. And we have live action. Probably we have to jump right in there with Levon Aronian and Fabiano-Caruana. Let's get the update. Let's get the current position. Oh, the knight on G8, but if that knight ever gets to F6, then white's bishop on D3. One should highlight that this bishop is in long terms can be outmatched by the knight on G8 if that knight ever reaches. But Levon locks down the position, making sure that that black knight will not be getting. And Fabi down to 1 minute and 13 seconds, no increment against 236 of Levon. Fabi is fighting. Forget about that pawn. The position is locked. He's dreaming of going knight e7, knight c8, knight b6, knight d7.
Yes.
And if that knight gets to e5, it will be black who will be starting to play for a win despite being pawned down.
He doesn't care about the pawn in this position. It's all about getting a good knight versus that bad bishop. There will be no targets for that bishop, and that knight on e5 will then start hitting white, not only the pawn on h4, but also the king on h1. Fabi says, I'm okay with trading, but as long as it's on my terms. He's also eyeing the move queen to c2, trying to get that open file, open line control. Rook takes c4. I don't believe he wants to take with the pawn. He does. He wants to. I think what he wants to get, what he's dreaming of, is a c5 break. At some point, queen takes pawn, c5, but Fabiano-Caruana, he stops it. He's not allowing white's pawn to move forward. Under a minute, how many moves to go? 3 moves to make.
Yeah, queen b2. So yeah, Levon is making sure that black will not be able to. So he did not want to go pawn hunting. Yeah, that d4 pawn is doing nothing. It's all about the question if is black's knight in time to join the battle or not. And knight e7, some queen b4, and eventually going queen a4 and queen e8 checkmate. Yeah, for example, like knight e7, queen b4, knight c8, queen a4 might be game over because of queen e8 coming in. Back to the live board, queen c5 played. Fabi sacrifices the pawn. I love it because queen b7 can be met by queen a3. And all of a sudden, the queen is activated and that knight is not moving, but it guards the king, which is otherwise in a mating net.
Still 2 critical moves to be made, and what you're pointing out that after sacrificing the pawn, it's not only the bishop that's attacked, which white can defend, but you suddenly step in with your queen. You're looking for counterplay against white's king. So the knight, a king's best friend when it comes to defense, and your opponent's king's worst enemy when it comes to an attack. Right now doing a perfect job of keeping the back rank guarded, because of course the g6 pawn creates all these attacking, checkmating motifs. Queen c5 on the board. Levon cannot allow the activity with the queen, but if not, black does have the idea of bringing in the knight. But the point is, I think, Peter, when Fabi plays knight e7 is when queen takes b7 will become a reality.
Yes, but look at the clocks. Fabi is down to 25 seconds, so yes, the next 2 moves will be surviving up all the way till the time trouble without blundering anything, without, a3 queen b4 is kind of very sophisticated, very nice point there. But Levon goes for it, okay.
Maybe he's just gonna...
And
okay,
queen
a5 coming in from e1. Same idea, Peter.
Yes, but...
It just felt queen a3 was more forcing because you hit the bishop as well.
Yeah, to me it intuitively was more natural, but...
One more move.
One more move, but what is computer really believing that bringing the queen back to
queen
b1?
B2.
B2, wow, queen b2. That's the move that would have been impossible after queen a3. Queen e1 check, and then king g2, just like this.
Takes.
Giving up the h4 pawn.
Probably takes on d4.
Yeah, and then with c5, and then white can, wow. And
Oh, he
king
finds
b2
it.
on
He
the board.
finds it, and he gets the extra 30 minutes on the clock. And now for Fabi, well, I think his next move is going to be obvious. He's going to go in with a check. Good or bad, you have to play it.
Yes, but what an unfortunate scenario. I'm pretty sure that he was thinking like, okay, I'm going to go a tempo, queen a5 or queen a3. And it made such a huge difference. Now king g2, the d4 pawn is falling, and then white will create a passer. And by the way, whenever you start giving me millions of checks, my king runs towards the queen side, and there shouldn't be any perpetual check issue.
And now that the players have made time control and slowed down, I think I want to bring up that critical moment that you were pointing out. It was right here, Peter, with just a minute on the clock for Levon. He grabbed on b7, and now Fabi has two ways to get the queen into the attack. You can go on a3 and a5, and he chose the wrong one. Queen to a5, lets go of a key square of defense. Meanwhile, queen a3, controlling b2.
But okay, queen b1, yeah, then that was his problem. Then also queen c1 is not a threat anymore, and he didn't know what to do. And
Very
maybe,
possible, but
yeah.
queen b1, then you're just tied up. You never have c5, and you keep the position. Maybe you'll even have time, for example, after queen b1, to play the move knight e7. Because queen b8 check, you go back knight g8.
Yes, we go back. But okay, with 20 seconds on
Very
the
difficult.
on the clock, because knight e7 threatens absolutely nothing. Yeah, you can play king g2, and our king is so much boxed in that we are not able to run to e8. Yeah, it's going to be only g8 and f8, and we are still in checkmates.
And black will just have to keep shuffling around, hoping that the queen cannot get active. Queen a3 was the precise move. The problem with what Fabi played was that it allows a really nice defense, taking control of some key squares, but also, very importantly, targeting a key pawn on d4. And now Fabi is thinking, we're expecting queen takes pawn, and the big difference this time will be when c5 arrives on the board.
And then let us already use the moment that the time trial has ended, that after rook c7, we have to give some incredible appreciation for the move rook c4. With 2.5 minutes on the clock, Levon sensed perfectly that it's not about picking, Caruana picks up the pawn, it's now not critical action. Okay, I will just highlight it that yes, the move had been played, we talked about it, white will take on d4. If black starts giving checks, then simply white's king is running towards the queen side. Finally, the king will find safety, and obviously white's pawns will be more powerful. But finding this element and knowing that Fabi has so little time on the clock, rook c4, changing the character of the game. Rook takes c4, b takes c4, and it's all about the b file that suddenly you create new dynamics, yeah, to your opponent, new problems to face. And queen a7, queen b2. The problem of queen b4 coming, I don't know what should have been done or not. It's impossible to say in few seconds. In any case, Fabi played the natural human reaction, queen c5, giving up that pawn, and goes for activity. And this is how we reach but this rook c4, b takes c4, queen b2 was fantastic from Levon.
And then eventually the c pawn and the d pawn will be much faster than than Fabi's h pawn, moving down the board once the d4 pawn is picked up. As these two fight, we're on time control, 40 moves have been crossed. We do have a special guest joining us in the studio with Niklas and Magnus Carlsen with his first game from the semi-finals win against Nodirbek. Magnus, that was an absolute roller coaster.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it doesn't feel like as much of a roller coaster for the players because we don't know the swings. But it was just a weird game. It was very hard to figure out what was going on at any point. And yeah, I mean, then all of a sudden we exchanged queens, and I realized that I was winning. Was a bit surprising.
Yeah, Magnus, congratulations on a very important first win. Would you like to take us through from the top, maybe even starting with the very first move? What your considerations were there?
Yeah. I had no idea, honestly, what to play on the first move, so none of the normal moves looked particularly appealing, so I thought let's do something like a little bit different. And I mean, it does have some sense to develop the knight here this way, take some space. But then again, as I did say in the confessional, I think this move d4 was maybe a bit over enthusiastic. Like I think he should definitely have taken it. I was going to go f4, and if c5, then to play c3. But honestly, I think I was just too enthusiastic here. I think he can go b6, which I kind of underestimated at first. If we go back here, if he plays d6, then I think all of a sudden, yeah, already like you see that this is like a massive swing. So this is what I was counting on. This like knight d3, long castles, and here we go.
Gambit style.
But yeah, probably I realized like after a while that b6 is probably quite strong. So maybe like instead I could regain the pawn, like playing something like queen b4 or knight b3. Yeah, but it didn't look too appealing. So I was quite relieved when he went for this. Okay, knight d3.
He still didn't want to take
No,
the pawn,
I mean now.
but now it's a better version already.
Now it's yeah. Now like if takes f4, this makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
So
then
or f3 maybe, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, what he did was quite logical.
c4. This seemed to be a big moment here.
Yeah. I was quite unsure. It was actually quite interesting here. If he'd gone bishop c7, which is a very normal move, I was going to play the move a4. And I was just going to play like this, and then c4. And I don't really care about this pawn. I just want to gain this tempo to play b3, c4. Now I stabilize, I go queen d2, I go short castle, and I have a pretty nice position. Like computer says slightly better for white, but black, but I felt that practically this was quite nice for me. So I was kind of expecting this, but I had no idea how to evaluate these positions. Like I thought I was probably okay, but it was so incredibly weird. Yeah, I see now the computer says that I'm better, but I really had just no idea what was going on.
Yeah, computer preferred to go to f5.
Yeah, I could have. Yeah, I probably should have done that. G6
and e3 here.
E3. Yeah, I was considering then this, just give up this pawn. I don't know, knight d4 or something like that. Oh, okay. Apparently that's bad. So maybe there is some tactical justification here, but that was kind of hard to see.
Yeah, let's have a quick look. Queen d2.
Queen d2. And then bishop c7, I go knight h6. Yeah, or
knight takes d5 even.
Knight takes d5. Okay, I'm having problems.
Then
problems visualizing. And then I can.
No, okay, you have to castle all the way to a8, yeah.
And then I can go.
Okay, this is insane. Okay,
I can go take this.
Okay,
I mean,
this is crazy.
yeah, I didn't think I needed to play that concretely. I thought even here I was doing pretty okay, but yeah, I thought.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things happened. I thought here. I actually thought rook f7 might have been a better regrouping, but apparently like that's a terrible move. So I mean we just have no idea. Anyway, like what happened seemed more or less logical.
Yeah.
B4.
Maybe he missed this f5 move. We were wondering.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I really don't think so. I think this was all planned.
But here, were you happy about your position after h6?
No, I mean, I thought I have some prospects, but it's also quite vulnerable because he's gonna take on f5 at some point, get the knight going. So I wasn't sure at all, but maybe I made mistakes later. I don't know. Okay, bishop g5, a4, gf5.
Yeah, he could have taken with the knight as well. This was the engine's preferred choice.
Oh, yeah, I just didn't want to
and
allow
then play
those.
a5 and go for the attack. Knight e5, queen g2.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, I should have done this. Yeah, I didn't trust myself here.
And Magnus, then one question, if you were not that sure, if he plays bishop h4 instead of g takes f5, then how you were planning to avoid the repetition? What was your
bishop h4,
idea
rook
after
g1,
bishop? Then bishop g5.
I mean, I thought I can go knight f1.
Yeah, exactly. But you would have played knight f1, right?
Yeah. This position I was not... I thought like this actually kind of worsens his position. Because I think now after this I can just take with... Okay, apparently I should take with bishop, but I thought I could even take with a pawn. And go rook h1 and sort of keep his knight at bay. But yeah, I mean, here...
Yeah, here it's around equal.
Yeah, here I'd clearly kind of lost control a bit. And I had no idea here.
Were you surprised to see queen e4 happen?
No, I was not surprised because I didn't realize that it was a bad move. And it's far from obvious at first. But yeah, I mean, mostly I was expecting ba5. But I mean, it was really hard to judge actually.
Yeah, you probably should have taken and then play queen e4.
Yeah, probably takes in queen e4, and I mean equal seems a reasonable assessment. But he also played queen e4 with such confidence that I was wondering if I'm actually worse. But I'm very happy that I managed to sit down, relax, and actually realize that I'm much better, because it's far from obvious at first, but it's really just shocking how bad his bishop on g5 is.
Yeah, and rook h1 being the key move here.
Yeah, okay, but that's really kind of obvious. But I mean, the key move here is bishop to f4. I'm actually shocked that he didn't, because rook f8, that's just
Losing on the spot.
resignation. So knight g7, this is what I was considering, king c8, knight to e6, now rook e4. And I mean, there are many tempting ways for me to play here, but I wasn't sure if it's actually that easy to win. Like this, knight c5, I think king e7, and you know, once I take on b7, I have to reckon with check, even though that probably wins. But also here, I didn't quite see how to win on the spot. So I mean, for better or for worse, he had to try this. Or he could also
take in bishop f4.
Take in bishop f4. But yeah, this I think just generally wins quite prosaically. I think I just I can actually even put the knight in e7 if I want, and yeah, generally it should win in the long run. But rook f8, that was crazy, because now it's not even difficult. Like I have a lot of plans to win, for instance b5 followed by knight c6, and I can do whatever I want. Like if bishop d3, bishop e4, I mean, I can take it knight e6 to c5, this wins easily, but I can also like just go rook h3, b5, knight c6.
b5, knight c6 is quite a nice motive, but also he just doesn't have any.
No, he doesn't have any moves. Like his bishop is just shockingly poor.
All right, congratulations, Tanya Peter. Do you have any questions for
Well,
Magnus?
our feeling was that it was a fantastic positional masterpiece, so we were very happy to have the privilege of experiencing it. This knight c2 prophylaxis, getting b4 in, we thought like this was super instructive, because black seemed to be threatening rook f8, bishop f8, bishop c5. What did you think at that point?
I was far from sure. Like I thought like knight c2, b4 was the principled way to play, because I thought if he gets his bishop to c5, then I mean, I'm not really fighting for much, but yeah, it was the problem is, like, especially when you have such a weird starting position that, like, you have strategic plans, but these guys are too good, so they always find ways to make it very, very, very difficult. And I feel like I was trying to do, trying to get my pieces on good squares, but in the end it was a little bit random that the way it happened. But I'm happy with the fact that I managed to at least, like, you know, think on my own from move one and do something like a little bit different from what the others did. I would not call it a masterpiece by any means, but I would say that it was definitely a very interesting strategic game, and that's what we're all here for.
Magnus, G4, starting with G4, pawn sacrifice early on. Can we call this anti-young player chess and freestyle chess?
No, so the funny thing is, on the score sheet, you know, there's a space for the round, the date, the opponent, and for whatever reason, there's a space for opening, which makes no sense whatsoever. So I just wrote G.O.A.T today as I played one G4, and then I think, like, yesterday was King's Pawn opening, and the first day was like E4, E4, E5, B4. So I just wrote miscellaneous instead. So yeah, I don't know what to call it. I think it's not so easy to play anti-young player chess in this format for sure.
Fair. And before we let you go, Magnus, this is the live position on Levon versus Fabi. Give us your thoughts on the action on.
I guess Levon is winning.
Winning, yeah.
I think at some point C5 is gonna come, and the board is just way too big. So there's just never going to be any perpetual. So Fabi's only chance is to push the H pawn, but I don't see it happening.
All right, Magnus, thank you so much for stopping by, sharing your thoughts, and good luck for the final classical game of semis tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Magnus Carlsen there. He won his first game, needs only a draw to make it through to the finals. Nodirbek has to win on demand to take it into playoffs. And Magnus's verdict on this one, Levon's clearly winning.
Yeah, that was also our impression that C4, C5 break is looming in the air. Now the big question is, how does White run towards the queen side, right? We were talking about this, that it's very natural and we are expecting White's king to escape on the queen side, but it's easier said than done, because now we have some critical issue. For example, the move king e3 might run into queen h2, and that's kind of a nasty little move, because I'm not allowing White's king to run away. I'm cutting it on the second rank. By the way, I'm setting up a deadly queen g1 check, winning the game. And if White doesn't have a good move, then who knows? Ideas like h5, knight h6, knight g4 hang in the air, or just keep on pushing. So intuitively, I feel that maybe something like king f2, queen h2 check, and then somehow running, but I would like to start running already towards the queen side. So if you have this difficult spot and it turns out that one of these moves is clearly better than the other, then practically this is very far from over.
Once again, Black's biggest problem piece in this position is this knight. You bring it anywhere in the center of the board and we're talking about a completely different game. Knight and queen, a very dangerous combination against the opponent's king, but that's not this knight on the board. This one just has to play a forever defensive role on the back rank, and combining that with c5, Peter, it's going to be too slow. And yes, you were pointing out we've got moves, so h2 played, queen h2 check.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight that suddenly one idea hit me in the line with king e3, queen h2. Suddenly I noticed that there is bishop e2 move. That certain suddenly gave me some stability, because I get this d3 square, I'm running out of this, but
c5.
But okay, queen g1, king d3, queen b1 check, all of a sudden then we lose control. So it's still very much a game. And
Levon's precise with king to f2.
Well,
But
we
then
don't know.
check and then a2 is anyways hanging. But I don't believe that black has time to go pawn hunting, Peter. For example, you were to fall back with the king to e1. Don't go to e3. That would be a big, big mistake. A tactic that you pointed out earlier. Loses the queen on the spot. There's no way for the king to stay connected to the white queen. And queen h2, I believe, is on the board. I don't think Levon will repeat with king f3.
No,
Just makes
definitely,
no
definitely not. But on the other hand, we know that going with he plays king
goes
e1.
king e1.
I said intuitively that yes, somehow king f2, king e1 maybe, but it's also a very scary strategy. And finally, we are also getting a game which passes the 40th move. This is the very first classical game here in the tournament in Weissenhaus in freestyle chess that we really see an intriguing endgame being played out. Look at the clocks. Those are the last 24 or 21 minutes for Levon and Fabiano. Clearly now they are getting the 30 seconds increment, but we know what those 30 seconds mean when you get done to them. Yeah, it's a horror show, and yeah, it's still. And Fabi goes pawn hunting. He grabs the pawn on a2 because he's also trying to give them queen a5 check. Yeah, he's trying to set up. But white has to probably sacrifice this pawn anyway.
It doesn't matter, I believe. I just also want to quickly point out that the other counterplay that Magnus was talking about, the h-pawn, is just too slow. It's never going to be on time. And after h5, perhaps the move c5, you just bring that in, you trade, and it's the white pawn that will be rolling down the board with checkmating ideas in the end. So black will not have the time to promote.
Yeah, and let's just push this line till the end. So h4, d6, h3, d7. Queen moves to g2, or okay, queen g2, just to highlight that. D8 queen, h2, and then queen takes g8 is a checkmating idea. Otherwise, it would be black who is checkmating white, but we are just we are just one tempo ahead.
And to show your point that in this position, if it wasn't for this check, it's actually no checks on the board for white, and black wins on the next move. So because of the back rank motive, the h-pawn is just one move too short. Fabi calculates his way through, goes with the idea of queen a2, and now let's just deep dive into the other plan of sacrificing what is going to be the second pawn in the... No, it's equal right now. Actually, the first pawn in the position. It's kind of hard to even calculate that the pawns are level right now.
Yes, but yeah, after c5, it's not this queen a5 check, and then d takes c5 tempo. That hurts white. In a practical game, that's very annoying. First of all, where do you put your king?
Let's put it on e2
yes,
for now.
e2 and d takes c5 tempo.
I just want to point out that you can't go in for a queen trade because after this, the knight is just too slow and too trapped to stop this pawn. So d takes c5 would be the only move in this position.
Yes, and then where do you place your queen?
I want to place it here, Peter, because I also want to control the a2 square.
Yes, and then against queen b6, then you're gonna take on a6 or what?
I'm trying to calculate.
Yeah, no, probably you, but you will. But then I'm gonna go queen b2 check, and are you certain that those checks will not do any harm?
I'm not certain of anything right now, but I think that's the point of deep diving into this position, because this might be the reality. This might be on the board. As we're talking, queen takes pawn. Nicholas, are you expecting Levon to sacrifice a pawn on c5, or is there something that we're missing in the position?
Well, there's a very direct way to treat this position here, playing c4, c5. Of course, there are other choices. You could play queen c3 first, for example, to prepare c5 without having to sacrifice the pawn. Also looks very attractive, and I'm sure Levon is considering it. However, maybe the queen can come back here and still try to defend these squares along the long diagonal, along the g1, a7 diagonal. But c5 is possible and good after queen a5 check. It's a question where we put the king. I don't think it matters that much. Let's just put it on e2, looks natural. And after d takes c5, queen c4, you were spot on already, especially going after this pawn on a6. So queen b6, queen takes a6. The endgame is again lost, because the white king is too active and this pawn too strong. And after queen b2 check, king f3, there's no follow-up check for black. And I guess you can try to get something going here. But like Magnus said, it feels difficult to imagine that black can somehow get a perpetual check just with the queen alone, d6. And the knight is just, it's not involved. And this seems to be winning. So
I love the way how Magnus put it. He said like the board is too big,
For
right? It
perpetual.
was such a nice way of putting it. Yeah, that immediately those were his first instincts. Did we have a...
we have a move, Queen B6.
Wow, okay, a move that we did not discuss at all.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. What Magnus is implying is that the king can either hide on one side of the board. If you start checking from the queen side, the king will find safety on the king side. So there is very little chance of a perpetual in this position, especially with the bishop and queen so nicely placed in the center of the board. We do have a move. And after queen takes a2, I really liked the idea that Niklas was also pointing out, the retreating move queen to c3. You take control of so many key squares from this queen, and then you have this really, the same idea that we've been talking about, which comes with a power punch. And I believe Levon has exactly that in mind. He takes away the a5 square, for example, again a key square. He's hitting on d6, c5 in the air. He's just playing against this idea. But this does, for now at least, allow one check to come in.
Yeah, one check or queen a3 with hitting the bishop, which probably will be answered by king e2.
The same answer to queen a1 check.
Yes, very similar. And then, okay, black cannot really do anything against the c5 advance. So then is h5, c5, for example, some raise that we have to calculate, or is black just keeps on chasing white's king with another queen a2 check, yeah, which would come back that queen a1 or queen a3 would be kind of the same if we just keep on insisting on delivering some checks.
So the two moves that we're considering, well, three actually, queen a3, queen a1, and start pushing the h pawn. I believe, Peter, that after h5, I don't think you want to take on d6 and waste time. Because time is of the essence.
No, actually, I think I would probably
You would take on d6 and not c5. I'd be very
probably
tempted to go c5.
Also c5, but I don't believe that black will play a move like h5 here, yeah? It's,
Yes.
You will do something, yeah? You just feel that the h pawn is too slow if he has already picked up the pawn on a2, right? Just a move before. That means that he is really counting on some queen a3 disturbance.
Queen activity ideas rather than the h-pawn moving forward. So let's just follow through with this line. To me, king e2 feels like the most natural square. Queen a2 check, let's say. And now where are you really hiding on this big board? That's the...
Yeah, because king e3, I want to go queen h2 again. Yeah, I want to imply this, that against king e3, I'm
let's
having
take a look
this...
at this. Can I go c5 here?
Well, but now it's getting tricky. For example, d takes c5, d6, queen g1 check, and then some queen d4 is coming. I don't know, this queen on d4 could be unpleasant. Queen f2 check is possible first, for example.
And you're saying in the end of it all, you'll get your queen to d4, stopping the move d7, forcing white's queen to a square, which will be further away from the king. So
Yes.
perhaps then the board will not be too big for a perpetual.
Exactly. Then things are getting out of control. So yeah, there is so
Not
much
easy.
to... Not easy at all. Okay, Levon did take his time. He's down to 19 minutes. He has a clear vision. I'm pretty sure that he already knows how he wants to handle this. Is suddenly something like queen a3, king d2, and then going with the king towards the c file, and then eventually intercepting some check with the queen or the bishop
And
on
the queen will go to c5. So just to point out another idea,
Yes.
that if you give a check here and you do fall with the queen, then there's this square
Exactly.
on c5, which I really like because I stop your main idea.
Yeah, this is the dream defensive setup from black's perspective. So humanly, it looks unpleasant, but we are not yet giving up. We are not yet giving up with black.
And that's why I was slightly surprised when Magnus, you know, just he said that this is completely winning and it should be possible. And of course, you know, for most of us, but then Magnus Carlsen is not most of us. For most of us, we still feel there are chances of perpetual check and white still needs to be careful. And if he
No, I think he said white should be winning this. I'm not sure that he said he's
said
completely
clear-
winning.
I think he said clearly. Because I said clearly.
I don't know. We have to
We
rewatch
have to
the show.
rewind. Maybe chat can
Yes.
tell us what were the exact words. But yes, just taking to the point that white should be winning this.
Yes.
But probably needs to be a little precise at the same time.
Exactly,
It's
but
not
you know,
completely
when
over.
Magnus says that white should, he assumes that white will be precise, right? This is his assumption because he has this standard, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, if Magnus is playing white, probably most of us would anyways just resign in this position, so without even trying. But right now for Fabi, he's down under 20 minutes, as both players are under 20 minutes. This is the final time control. They do get a 30-second increment. But it's a very tricky position to fight. Black is clearly on the defense here because of the problem, not just the problem of the c5 and the d pawn being a passer. We do have a move, I believe.
I think queen
a3 on the board. We've been discussing this and we're expecting the king to step up either to d2 or to e2 to defend this bishop. But the biggest problem in Fabi's camp is the king and the knight. The knight just cannot find itself into an active spot.
Well, for a second I have seen Levon. Yeah, that would. But then we get checkmated on the back rank. Yeah, that's
the problem.
That's the problem. For a second, Levon's heart rate jumped to 116. I haven't really been seeing his heart rate so high yet. It shows that he knows that this is such a big opportunity. Yeah, it's a knockout match. It's the semifinals. It's a 2-game match. You have to use every single chance, and this is clearly a golden opportunity.
And I always find these kind of positions, you know, as we're analyzing, we're showing the difficulties that exist, the potential ideas for defense for Black and the things that Fabi needs to be careful about, the breaks that we're talking about. In these positions, computers are so precise. They know the exact square where the king belongs. So perhaps, Nicholas, you can give us an overview, an over picture of what really is the winning path for Levon here.
Well, it must be connected to the break of c5, as you already pointed out. And first, in this position now, the queen attacks the bishop. So the king steps forward, king d2. And here we looked at some different moves for Black. For example, the check on a2. And it seems to me that White can block this check by going bishop c2. Because if you take my pawn on c4, I take the pawn on d6. And we end up in a similar situation where I have this very strong pass pawn.
But hang on, Nicholas, I'm gonna give you queen d4 check, and finally I can give this, and you don't care, yeah? King e2, queen c4 check.
Bishop d3, I assume.
And queen a2 check, you just...
Then should be safe, yeah?
Wow, should be safe, yes. Okay.
Well, also here there's
yes.
a route maybe.
Yes,
and
yeah, that's a route, yeah.
I mean, someone just said it's a big board.
Yes, it's a big board, and yeah, with a little help, yeah, things are so much. Yeah, bishop c2 is it's a very difficult move, because giving this access for Black's queen on to d4 check, yeah, and for a second it looks like queen takes d6. We are giving up the control of the most important square on the board, but it doesn't do anything. That I want to see Levon play bishop c2, and how quickly he finds it. It's not gonna be easy.
So king d2, queen a2 is on the board. And the fact that he did choose the d2 square, perhaps bishop c2 is very much...
No, not yet. No.
It is on,
It's been played
It's on the board.
Yes, we're in this position.
Okay, then all eyes on Levon, because this bishop c2, this is a true mastery. Not to be afraid of ghosts, yeah?
Yes. And it's so easy to feel that if Black's queen lands on d4 with the checks, with the lines that you've been discussing, that the white king will not be able to hide.
And what about king c3? Is king c3 a good or bad move?
King c3 is also possible, but
Queen a3 we were looking at.
it seems that after queen a1, you pretty much have to go back. Or king c2, I'm guessing this queen a2 check. Yeah, it seems you pretty much have to go into this line with bishop c2. Other ways are not as convincing. So queen a2 check. Yeah, and if the king goes to e3, then again you have the queen,
this queen h2
sliding over,
G1.
defending from over here, threatening queen g1 check. And again, this is not so easy.
Yeah,
so
Levon is about to make a move, and he played it, I think.
It's on the board. This is why he's known as the artist.
Yeah.
He just finds these ideas so creative. I mean, Peter, to me, this is very impressive. To feel that your winning chances lie with this bishop retreat, allowing Black to capture that pawn. Let's just update our analysis board as well. This is really, it's classic Levon.
Yes, bishop d3 to c2, true mastery. And basically now it's very difficult, knowing that queen d4 check is nothing. Yeah, the hope, the human hope. Yeah, that you think like, okay, if that white queen ever gives up the d4 control, then we give a check and should be perpetual check, or it should give us the chance. But if it's not, then there are not too many other resources.
Oh, it's trouble for Fabiano, as he also perhaps is realizing that White's king is finding safety from the checks and the deep also will be very strong. As Levon showcases some creative ideas, Peter, it's time for our chat to get creative as well, because we've got a really fun giveaway for them. And it is our giveaway of the Freestyle Chess Go Challenge. Let's have it up. You have to put your thinking caps on, come up with something creative, and there it is, Peter. Oh wow, that's a photo of us as well. And there it is. It's happening on Twitter or X. What do you call it? Do you call it Twitter or X, Peter?
Well, both, yeah. I'm not on it anyway, but I call it both.
You say you're not on it, but somehow you know exactly and everything that's going on in it. So that's a mystery I haven't been able to solve over the years. But here you have it, chat. You have to come up with a freestyle rap for us. A freestyle rap for freestyle chess. Wow. So it's quite the challenge. It is the freestyle rap GO challenge, I want to call it. And you've got to drop a beat, tweet a freestyle rap on freestyle chess. You can make it as long or as short as you like. Use the hashtag freestyle chess. Use the hashtag freestyle chess. Tweet us your rap. We will bring up the winner. There will be one lucky winner. And we will be announcing the winner on the broadcast. So get going, get creative, and you win a limited edition freestyle chess playing cards signed by all the players here. And Peter, those cards are sick. They are so cool.
Yeah, they are fantastic.
I've got them with me here.
Yeah, let's show them. This is some stunning stuff.
I don't know if they can actually see it, but Peter, you can.
Yes, let's show.
And they've got the photos of the players, the kings.
Some kings.
Those are the kings. Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, those are the kings. These are the jacks. Yeah, these are the kings, the four kings. Ding, Dingliran, Fabiano-Caruana, Levon Aronian, and Magnus Carlsen. All the four kings here.
Yeah, and you'll have them sign. These guys are going to sign these cards. And then we've got the four jacks as well.
Yes, here, don't be fooled. Don't think like, what is this B? Well, B means Bube. In German, that's the jacks. And yeah, here we see Vincent Keimer, Alireza Firuza, Nodirbek Abdusatulov, and Gukesh. So some stunning lineup in the jack section, and of course the stunning kings there as well.
So we've got this limited edition freestyle playing card set, and it will be coming your way. It will be signed by the 8 players who are playing the first ever classical format of freestyle chess. So get creative. The more fun it is, the more chances of you winning it, and we will pick one lucky winner to receive this. And apparently there are only 100 of these made. The players have a set each, we have a set each, and one lucky winner will get one of these. So get going on that contest. Don't forget to use the hashtag FreestyleChess on Twitter. And we'll be waiting for your rap coming in, and we'll feature it on our broadcast show. We might even get Peter to rap it out for you.
Well, I feel like whenever it's about X or Twitter, then Anish Giri is the main favorite, yeah? So, guys, you have to step up your game because you have to stop Anish Giri. I'm pretty sure that Anish will be involved, and if it comes to Twitter, then he's the king in my eyes.
Oh, wow. Peter is declaring Anish the king of Twitter. Meanwhile, who will be the king in this game between Levon Aronian and Fabiano-Caruana? Because Lev's king is being hunted by that black queen. We will dive deeper into this position, but first we're going to go into a quick short break, Peter, and we'll be right back. The position we were discussing is on the board. Chat, don't go anywhere, except Twitter to put out your rap.
Day 4, marking the second day of the quarterfinals at the Freestyle Chess Greatest of All Time Challenge in Weissenhaus, has begun. It's now more crucial than ever for the players to muster all their energy to advance to the semifinals.
The outcome of the tournament is still very open. Players are very close to each other. Everything depends on maybe on one day the one player is playing very good, and the other day the other player is in a better shape. So you cannot really predict who's going to win at the end.
This tournament is not only unique because of its exclusiveness, but also wants to make chess accessible and interesting for everybody, and not only the chess community.
It's amazing to be here and to meet all these amazing players. I can see how they play, their movement, and how they plan. When I finish my experience here, I think I will be also a grandmaster of chess. Kidding.
Today, once again, Fabiano-Caruana secures a victory against Gukesh Domaraju. Nodirbek Abdusatorov and Ding Liren are playing to a draw. Levon Aronian wins against Vincent Keimer.
I absolutely love it. It brings the excitement back in the game of chess, I think, for most of us. I mean, even when I was playing badly in the start, the rapid section, I was still enjoying it immensely.
Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja have the same score and are playing a tiebreaker. It's the most exciting game of the evening. In the end, Magnus, the greatest of all time, makes it into the semi-finals as he defeats Alireza Firouzja.
It's absolutely exhausting, but I think that's the way it's supposed to be. Chess to me is mainly a sport, and it's not supposed to be easy on the players. But it's really hard. It's really hard work.
And once again, an exciting day at Weissenhaus draws to a close. Be sure not to miss the semifinals at freestylechess.com. 3 questions on Levon Aronian. Why is rest so important during the tournament?
It's a very demanding game, especially, freestyle chess, where you have to think from move 1. The pressure is always there, we're not used to that so much. So we love this, but it's very stressful at the same time.
What do you like to do before and after an important game?
Before the games, what I mostly do is, maybe play some bullet games, solve some chess tactics, walk around, listen to music. So generally something light, because I believe that preparation should be done before the tournament starts.
What advice do you give to young chess players?
The most important thing to remember that those best players in the world are not really some aliens. We're all simple people. Just we worked hard, and we love the game, and we had good advices throughout our career, and we're willing to sacrifice a lot of things in our life. So it's important to have this understanding that you cannot do everything. If you want to become a world champion or a very good chess player, there are some aspects of your life have to be dedicated to this goal.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone, as we're reaching the final stages of the game between Levon Aronian and Fabiano-Caruana. When we left it last, we were very impressed with Levon's decision and the fact that he found the idea of retreating with the bishop to block some checks. Let's dive straight into the action. Meanwhile, Peter, I was thinking about my entry for the rap giveaway.
Wow.
Do you want to hear it?
Yes. Yes.
It's really bad, though. I'll quickly... Okay, but first, actually, we do have moves, and this was our giveaway. Let's remind everyone, guys, you got to drop a freestyle rap on Freestyle Chess. Use the hashtag freestyle on X, Twitter. Call it what you want. The winner will win some really cool freestyle playing cards, and we will have Peter rap the worst that does win. Meanwhile, let's get back to the chess, Peter. I'm still thinking about my entry, so when I'm ready, I'll tell you and you give me your true critique on it. Queen A2 check was played. Bishop falls back. Really the only way for White to keep the game going, to fight for that advantage. He had after Fabi takes the pawn, you can grab back on d6, and yes, you get a really nice looking check on d4, but indeed the king will be safe. And we see that Fabi, realizing that the checks get you nowhere, you can go queen to c4, bishop d3, queen a2. Perhaps the king just moves forward. It's hard to imagine checks there, and as we were looking at it, eventually the king would hide on the queen side. Fabi decides it's time to make this a race. The h-pawn is coming.
Yeah, he goes h5, but queen a3 was a brutally strong move. And yeah, Fabi is not happy. The queen on a3 is now ready to join the battle, guarding the king. Yeah, with queen e3, with many different, simply the third rank. Yeah, also he eventually can try to get the queen behind the d pawn and just keep on pushing. And whenever you start checking, then white's king will slowly somehow get to the queen side. When the move queen a3 had been played, I thought like, yeah, that's it. That was the key move. Everything else seems to be a matter of technique. Once you have queen a3 on the board, you know that you have it in your bag. Queen g3 played by Fabi. He was thinking, he was not happy. You can sense it that he knows exactly that he's in a lot of trouble. On the other hand, Levon, he sees that, okay, now I just have to be careful. I have already done all the hard work. It's time to cash in. But one has to watch out, because my move queen e3 actually allows black to set up some blockade on the d6 square. Let's just highlight here that queen e3, queen h2 check, and then the queen might fall back to d6. Be careful, maybe you should start advancing the pawn right away.
I'm thinking. Why not just go for it? Why not just go for d6? And if you give a check, of course, be careful of not stepping up on the third rank, because that would spell disaster. But perhaps white's king will find safety on the queen side.
Yeah, the reason why I had queen d3 on my mind is that after queen a3, I already had foreseen that I want to play queen d3, the queen moves somewhere, and then I'm going to go d6. And I was counting already on this escaping route, slowly, step by step, running towards the queen side. So for my taste, Levon goes for d6. Of course, d6 on the board, no force stopping this. Yeah, Fabiano trying to mobilize all his reserves. But is there any way? I think the answer is no, to stop this pawn.
The queen from a3 also does a really good job of stopping the h-pawn from advancing all the way to h3. Let's just look at some checks, because I think that's the hope that Fabi needs to rely on. And how does it all pan out, and how does white's king exactly hide Peter? So let's start with queen g2 check. You go to d1.
Yeah, I'll go to d1.
And let's give some checks here. You go to d2. And the point that I was trying to make was that maybe you can go queen f4.
Yes.
But then you go king c3.
And then you push h4. Now it's the time to push h4. Because d7 runs into queen c7 check.
So easy to fall for that. And I'm just going to show it to everyone that you have to watch out for tricks like this. It's a check that wins the key pawn in the position. So it's not going to happen. After h4, you probably have to spend some time getting back with your king then. Yeah, but then, yeah, maybe you go king b2.
Yeah, probably.
And you hide.
Yeah, you can afford, because d7 is a big threat. One thing I want to highlight, that actually the d pawn needs to win the game, because at some point I had this feeling like if black pawn keeps on advancing, then we might be able to checkmate black's king on the h file. But that's a complete mirage, because whenever you give a check on the h file, black blocks it with a knight h6, and if you give then a check on the back rank with queen b8, then the knight jumps back to g8. Yeah, so this is like a defensive mechanism that back rank mate or mate on the h file will not work. The d6 pawn has to decide the game.
The back rank mate will work once the d pawn promotes to the queen and sacrifices itself for this key defender, which is worth so much more. And once that, we've highlighted it in another line earlier, that we might be seeing tactical motives of giving up the queen for this knight and then followed by a back rank mate.
Yeah, Fabi down to 12 minutes with a 30-second increment. So this is not dramatic. The real drama is that there are no good defenses ideas. I'm even a bit scared to give the floor to Nicholas, because I believe that the brutal force of an engine already simply kills this position. Nicholas, anyway.
Oh, you're still giving it to me.
Yes.
All right, well, yes. So you're right, because there's no stopping the d pawn in the long run. You can give some checks, but it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, so queen f1 check, king d2, queen f4 check, what we tried to play.
Queen f4 check, yeah, king c3.
And then h4.
h4, and then, as
we could
Tanya
go
said,
king
king b2, also stopping the h pawn by opening up the third rank again.
Queen e5, king a2.
Queen e5, king a2, you're out of checks, and it will be over very soon.
We might be seeing these lines because, yeah,
d7,
the check,
queen d3 supporting.
the queen g2 check had been just given, and it's a very logical line. And the scary thing for Fabi is that even we have foreseen it, no, Tanya? We have foreseen these lines. So
That's the scariest.
Yeah, you don't need to be a computer, yeah, to find all this precision. It was even understandable for us.
I think what was the precision that was required was the move bishop to
Yes.
c2, because this is an idea that we struggled with to find.
Exactly.
Because it is a difficult resource to evaluate that your king will be safe despite allowing central checks with the black queen.
Yeah, so this is the current position. Queen g2 check just had been played, and Levon clearly not blundering the queen by going to the third rank. That would have been terrible. We already discussed this. Yeah, king d1, everything according to plans. Black needs to keep on giving these checks, but we already know the outcome. They don't do any harm to white's winning plan at all. So let me just highlight it with arrows. We have also confirmed with Nicholas. Everything that we have talked about was correct.
And Levon really struggled in the round of the event. It was a tough start for him. We saw him lose out on several of the games. But we've seen him get his form back when it comes to the classical format. And, you know, as they say, form is temporary, class is permanent. And in these longer time controls, Levon's showing his creativity and just how strong he can be, Peter. Yesterday's quarterfinal as well. Against Vincent, he seized the opportunity when he got it and never let Vincent come back into that game. The game where the queen on b8 was stuck for a really long time. For the entire game, actually. And then today as well, from start to finish, it felt like a slow, strategic way of just outplaying Fabi in this one.
Yeah, actually this Fischer Random game, this freestyle chess game, turned quite quickly into a classical chess game with all its principles, and then Levon was castling short, hiding that king on h1, playing with a pair of bishops. Black had that monster bishop on d4, but it was just a strategical vision of Levon, and he was always dominating that knight. Yeah, queen f1 check is played, so all the lines. I did talk to Levon, and I was sitting yesterday with him together during dinner. We were exchanging stories. It was a lovely evening. But one of the things we also discussed that, yeah, he was struggling. Yeah, he didn't have a good score in the rapid, but he actually had only himself to blame. He had many chances. He was not playing badly at all, and it's up to him. And now in this, in the classical portion, he's razor sharp, he's super sharp. Whenever he gets a chance, also comes to the confessional, he says that, yes, I'm an optimist, but anyway, I'm an eternal optimist, but I also really believe that my position is good and I don't want to miss it.
And Fabi is one of the strongest players in this format. We've seen him performance at the St. Louis Fischer Random, the Chess 9 LX tournament that they have there. I think he won it 1 year as well. So he's just got so much experience in this, and also he was the one who was holding the old guard, the fort for the old guard throughout this event. And now Levon this has been a one-sided game for the most part of it. Fabi's been on the defense, but really never managed to equalize it or get his chances.
Yeah, at least that was our feeling, also backed by the engine. If we would be asking the players, it will be very interesting to hear what they have to say. Yeah, that when they really felt like, aha, for example, Fabi, so that thanks to the darts, yeah, we see Fiona there.
Yeah, Peter, we've got more insights coming in from Fiona. She's analyzing. We will tune in soon again, but I believe she was analyzing this position, and well, everyone's involved in the freestyle chess action. So that was fun to watch. And of course, even though the games are over, the players are not completely alone. Fiona is still there in the playing arena, as we saw. But let's get back to this. The checks that we were looking at, Queen F2 on the board.
Because there was, just to finish let me
Yes.
finalize my thoughts, that there was this moment that in the middle game, Fabiano has given up his pair of bishops, but he was relying on dark sweat counterplay. So it will be very interesting during the dinner to ask Fabi what he was thinking. Also Levon, that when he really felt like, yeah, now I'm dominating, because it was a much more complicated middle game position than what kind of impression you get if you only look at the evaluation bar. Yeah, that black had this monster bishop on d4, so Levon really had to be a true artist to make sure that that knight is eternally dominated.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, just the point that you were making about what the players are feeling during the game. We felt the Magnus Nodirbek game was a total roller coaster. But when Magnus came in, he said, you know what, we were not feeling the swings as much. It was, but for us, the commentators and the fans, that was a crazy game to watch. But for the players, it's just about focusing on the next move, what they have on the position. They don't know what the evaluation is. And then just finding all these ideas like we saw in this game with the bishop c2. Just very, very impressive stuff. We're also getting an update that was Fiona preparing some social media content for our chess fans across the world.
Okay, that's always very interesting. Yeah, it's stunning. We have so much action.
So much going on.
At the board, everywhere, every angle of this tournament is so fantastic. It's really a privilege to be part of it. And Fabiano is pushing the h-pawn. The king on c1 will be checked if that will be an h1 queen check, but look at that pawn on d6. It seems to be way ahead of the colleague on h4. The first question, can we push d7?
That is the most important question on the board, because you have to watch out for checks which will eventually pick up the d7 pawn if you're not that careful. I'm not seeing it immediately because I believe after queen f4 you can hide your king, Peter.
Yeah, maybe is black trying to give some queen g1 check and then queen b6 check to win a tempo like this, but that pawn on d7 is extremely scary. It's about to be.
You're saying to give a check from here?
And Levon, no, Levon actually did not push his pawn. What did he do? He just stabilized.
But maybe we just quickly turn into Nicholas here. Nicholas, d7, was there a problem with that?
d7 was possible. The idea was probably queen f1 check, and now you cannot go to b2 because of queen b5 check. And picking up the pawn, and black is right back in the game. It would be also winning. You would have to run to c3, but queen d3 is a very classy move. No need to rush. You improve the queen, you take away checks, you still control the h-pawn, and this pawn is absolutely ready to run down the board, and I think will be resignation in just a couple of moves now.
How do you even keep this game going as black? If you have to defend this d pawn from promoting once it gets to d7 from the d8 square, that's a total nightmare. White just steps in with the queen and then eventually either lands on the c8 or the e8 square, and that would be over. So you have to try to give the checks. Where's the king hiding now?
Well, king b2 and then eventually bishop b3. That's kind of a very systematic and sympathetic way of dealing with these things. And then
Queen f2.
Yeah, and okay, king a3.
The only thing you have to watch out, yes, king a3, I think, Peter, but the only thing I want to point out is don't block it with the queen.
Yeah, don't blunder queen d4
Queen d4,
check.
I mean, there are a lot of arrows to, maybe we'll just queen g1 on the board. We might be seeing this, but the line that we're looking at,
Yeah,
you just
bishop
have to
b3.
watch out for ideas, as Peter's suggesting. Just sidestep with the king. You can go to a3 and eventually to a2. Block it with the bishop coming back to c2. But don't fall into any ideas of queen c2, queen d4, picking up the pawn. So these are the only things that you need to watch out for. Queen g1 check played. And we are seeing, in fact, king b2. So we might be seeing this line on the board.
Yes, it's very natural. Yeah, so queen b6 check is played. Now bishop b3, queen f2 check. Yeah, you see whenever already a winning side is comfortable enough breathing out his moves, it signals that he knows what he is doing. He knows that it's over. So queen f2 check, king a3, and after queen c5 check, then king a2.
Yes.
And I feel like the checks are running out.
And then when you come back to f2, you can block it with the bishop.
Yeah, and then the d pawn already queens.
Yeah, we're seeing this queen f2 check played. And very instructive. Levon slows down right now. He will make the move, but just to not fall for queen, not to d2, but queen to c2,
You
queen
could
d4.
play that even as
Oh,
well.
even that's winning.
Because you have queen c8 in the
The
end.
knight on g8. In fact, he doesn't go for it, but
It's the same, yeah, king b1.
you have a single track. You want that d pawn queening, so I like the fact that he just sticks to that. And where are you giving in the checks
Okay,
from?
queen e1 check. Yeah, queen e1 check now.
King a2.
Yeah, and then it transposes. Yeah, queen f2, then...
No, but queen a5 check.
okay.
King b2,
Yes, queen e5 check.
king b1.
King b1, and that's
Oh,
it. Yeah.
that's the way. So you're going to triangulate your way.
The board is too big. We already know this, no?
Yes, and the king comes back to b1 after e5. And once that's the position and black's queen is on e5, there will be no more checks. I think we're calling it out.
Yeah, of course, okay, there are no real surprises here. Queen e1 check. The arbiter is bringing new set of score sheets. This is always a very tricky spot. You never know as a player that if you feel that the position is lost, isn't it time to resign before we start another score sheet? Because otherwise it's ugly that you have a score sheet with 60 moves and then another score sheet with just 1-2 moves. But I think it shouldn't be the reason why you design or you continue the fight. Levon plays king c2, queen f2 check. And now we see that both players know exactly. Levon just wants to go queen d2, queen c5, and then
King b1.
he can hide also his king on a2. There is no queen a5 check at all. The new score sheet is in.
So the
In the
defensive
game.
setup that you're pointing out,
Yes.
you can, of course, black can never trade queens. That's a lost knight and bishop endgame. Again, because of this terrible, terrible piece for Fabi. So
And then king b, yeah, queen,
Queen
d2,
d2.
queen c5, king b2, queen e5 check, and then king a2, no more checks. The
Because
queen
the
on
queen's
d2 is beautifully protecting the a5 square, and it's resigns time.
yeah, the queen from e5 cannot give a check on a5. This has been resigned territory for a while, but I think we're inching towards the final few moves of this game, and this line indeed is being played out. And it's all about, in these moments, just slowing down to find that square, the coordination between pieces where you know your king is safe, and then you win the game. And that's what Levon did. He's figured that structure out. You don't need to calculate. You don't need to find 2 different ways, 3 different ways to do it. But you find one good setup, you stick to it, the d-pawn moves forward, perfect coordination between the queen, bishop, and the d-pawn, the king hiding behind them, and it gets the job done.
Yeah, and it's also kind of a common wisdom. Yeah, queen c5 check is given that if you have a light squared bishop, then it's very nice to place the queen on the dark squares. Yeah, that you are harmonizing, you are coordinating forces and control, and there is the handshake. Fabiano resigns, and he's complaining like, yeah, I don't understand. What did I do wrong? I played a good game. that's the kind of gesture I'm getting.
The board indeed was too big for White's king. Levon Aronian does get the win in. He gets the dub, taking the lead in their mini match for Fabiano-Caruana. With the white pieces, he will have to strike back in game 2 to take it to playoffs. And for Levon, a great result in quite the stylish way, with finding the right resource at the right time, keeping things under control from the start. Nicholas, what did you think about this gameplay that we had?
Yeah, Levon really maximized his chance, especially in the time trouble. This move that you highlighted, rook c4, if we can go back to this. And here, that was really the critical phase of the game. Fabiano was super low on the clock. And we can actually see it. He had 1 minute left. He traded here. And maybe he should have given up this pawn. For example, play something like queen c7, queen takes d4. But in either case, it would have been a long suffering. And he might have lost as well. Instead, he played queen a7, queen b2. And here he gave the pawn. And if he had played queen a3, it might have been a completely different story, because the queen cannot go to b2. You still have some counterplay. Who knows what this position would be? Still White has winning chances. But the way that the time trouble ended after queen a5, queen b2, now both players had made move 40. Now it was a really difficult situation. Levon calculated it well until the end and converted and takes a huge step to the finals. Tanya.
Yes, he puts 1 foot in, but there's still one classical game coming up, and we see the players there. They are analyzing this endgame and where the king could have hidden. Did Fabi have any possibility? Are we getting audio?
The players actually have to sign both score sheets, yeah? This is an extra trouble.
And Levon was very optimistic about his position from the start when he came into the confession move. Well, that's not anything new. We see him optimistic. We call him the eternal optimist in the chess world, much like my co-commentator, Peter. But this time, definitely had a lot to be happy about in the position right from the start, keeping it under control with the double bishop, with the bishop pair advantage, but just the way, the technique that he showed. And I think we are getting an audio.
Yeah, Fabi might have felt like he has done everything right. It was a locked position, the knight had perspects, and then finally it turned out that that passive bishop wins the game because the knight could never really be activated.
And that's all because of these critical pawn moves that Levon made. Instead of the traditional chess wisdom of trying to trade off pawns to open up the position for the bishop pair, we can see the pawn structure until the very end. He took away key squares from black knights, really restricting it and forcing it to a square from which it never managed to come out, really putting the black king in a kill zone all along the rank, all along the file, and in the end, the d-pawn, the coordination between the queen and the bishop, got the job done. Quite the game by Lev.
Yes, and he gets his d4 type of structures, right? That the positions that he feels so happy with. And I do hope that we might be getting Levon into the studio, especially now that all the action has ended. Yeah, let's take a look at the results. Not a single draw in our today's semifinals and also the consolation bracket. Magnus Carlsen delivering let me call it a positional masterpiece against Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Levon Aronian, another big milestone, what a strategical achievement there, taking down Fabiano-Caruana in a stellar game. Ding ran against Alireza, that was tragic right from the beginning. Ding blundering his knight, Alireza not giving him any chances, winning it. And Vincent Keimer with the black pieces, shocked Gukesh very quickly in the opening with that knight c4, and Gukesh never really stabilized the position.
4 decisive games and a score sheet for all of us to see. This is Magnus Carlsen's score sheet, and there we can see on the opening, he's like, why is there an opening sign to be filled on in freestyle chess? We see the G.O.A.T 1G4, a standard chess opening name for freestyle chess. We love it, and what we also love is that we are being joined in the studio with our other semi-finalists who scored a big win. Levon, congratulations.
Thank you.
And we're going to get into your game, but I have to ask you about that opening. What do you think about Magnus calling 1G4 the G.O.A.T?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, of course. Very fresh approach. I didn't foresee such actions.
Speaking also about your approach, you were analyzing before the game with Ding, and he chose d4, which is also a move you discussed, but as you mentioned in the confession booth, you usually analyze them for 10 minutes and then you just decide to play something else. e4, which was probably a better choice than d4 after all. Were you happy with how the opening went?
Yes, so, I mean, you know, as it is in science, the negative result is also a result, yeah? So we analyzed d4, and then at first we said, oh, e4 is not good because of f5. But then during the game, I just thought, okay, I'll just take queen h5, f3, and this should be nice for white. Yeah, I don't know why we were so excited for black in this position.
But you know, it was also my first instinct, yeah, that e4 is met by f5 and we don't know, let's take a look at other moves. It was our intuition, but yeah, when you highlighted in the confession booth, and we are really grateful for you that you not only one time, even twice visited it. It's always brilliant insights.
You were mentioning your first visit to confession booth, you're expecting bishop c4 here, and pretty much played out as you were expecting, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe bishop c4 is not the best move. Maybe,
It's not, no.
Yeah, maybe he's supposed to play with d5 or knight g6, yeah?
Yeah, knight g6
Yeah.
I think was the preferred choice here.
Yeah, I'm probably black is okay, yeah? But, you know, this position is difficult to understand.
And you know, you were highlighting queen a5 check, yeah, always as an idea. That's why you did not want to put the pawn on c3. What did computer suggest? Bishop c7. He was hearing your thoughts, yeah? Okay, Levon wants to get here. Let me go bishop c7 just in case.
Instead of bishop c4?
Instead of bishop c4, yes.
I thought this bishop c4, knight g6 is not principled. I mean, because I felt that, you know, now that I have the bishop, it should be pleasant for me.
It definitely is, yeah.
I thought c4 was correct choice, because with c3 I think it's nothing. It takes such a long time for me to castle. He'll be in time for d5, and, you know, the skirmish will start there in the center. Yeah.
Well, the way you proceeded, yeah, you proved your point, yeah. At this point, it wasn't so obvious for us how to evaluate it, but you so masterfully dominated, followed your strategy that...
I wasn't so sure it's anything, but, you know, visually, you know, there are the bishops and there is this knight is always stuck, yeah.
And if black goes for knight c7, f5 plan, then what was your kind of reaction here? It was one of the things
Yes,
we
yes.
discussed with
C7
Tanya.
here?
Knight c7
Or
followed by
maybe even
f5.
f5 already immediately.
No, I
It's
thought
possible.
this is the most principled way for black to play. I wasn't sure, you know. I thought maybe queen d2, f5 castle, something like this.
I like this. The
Yeah.
short castle always being the key.
Yeah. I don't think I can afford to have a long castle here. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
Although I would like Bagratic, you know, Zamish,
Yeah.
our coach. But I think this is not the Zamish.
Yeah, Tanya also pointed out that a5, a4, b3, the dark squares and so on, yes.
Yes. Well, Fabi went for a completely different plan, and
I think here, yes, he played very strangely, yes.
what do you think, where did it go wrong for him here in the middle game?
Well, I think this knight d2 and queen e2, bishop c5, I think this is very passive. Yeah, just bishop d3. At least he has to take, yeah, taking queen e8, I saw this. But once the bishop goes to d2, I think it's a positional, suicide for black, yeah, to allow bishop d2, because he can never find a play.
Yeah, but I think one can write a book about this, yeah, because it looks like this monster bishop on c5 goes to d4, but you just don't care, yeah, it's a stunner.
Yes, very standard idea, and it's you know, it's basically a French, yes. It's
French?
just, yeah, I mean, just put the bishop, like you also have these bishops, just put the d6 on this d5 and in e6, and just change the color of the bishop, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's just a French.
it looked like a true art, to be honest, the
Thank
way
you.
how you proceeded.
Yeah, no, it was a very difficult position, and then I think I misplayed it in a time trouble. I got too excited, I think. But I thought g6 I will win somehow. You know, I thought
you
g6,
did.
rook c4 I somehow will win, but maybe I gave him
Okay,
chances.
we were praising your rook c4 was another double exclamation mark move.
I thought it was a good move.
It was.
Definitely in his time trouble
No,
here.
it's type of a position that I felt Peter would be very excited to play with white. Yeah?
He was loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems that after time trouble, you are indeed in a winning position.
I felt
here.
it, but Fabiano said that he probably missed some chances.
Well, maybe it's some chance to pose more problems, but it seems here it's
Feels
already
like c5 is
over.
going to come and it's going to be a win, yeah?
What about that idea of queen a3 instead of queen a5? Was that something that you were looking at?
Almost 39 or 40.
Ah, no, this I didn't look at. Okay, I was terrified to lose on time, yeah?
Understandable.
Didn't have time to look at anything.
Because after queen a5 and queen b2, that's really a strong move because
Yeah.
your king hides. And we had Magnus in there, and
Yeah.
we asked him for his opinion, and he said the board is too big for Levon's king. It will hide.
Yeah, but, you know, with Fabiano, you never know. He's so resourceful. I mean, anything can happen against him. I mean, the amount of positions he saves, this is his main skill, I think.
But this one, you didn't let him get away, and you, in the end, got your king to safety, and the d pawn decided the game.
Yeah. No,
So-
I'm very pleased with my performance so far.
Yeah, no, this has been a really, really good game. Tanya and Peter, do you have any more questions?
Okay, from my perspective, yesterday and also today you played e4, but you actually, no, yesterday it was d4, today it was e4, you transform it into a classical d4 kind of structure and you showed masterclass in both games. Do you feel that it's connected, that you got structures that suit your style perfectly, you understand those positions very well?
Well, it's hard to tell, but those positions are so weird that none of us understand what's going on. So we just have some guidelines, yeah? Because, of course, probably a computer with black would equalize and play f5 actively. But we're humans, we want to activate our pieces. And I think this was Fabiano's problem. He wanted to exchange and activate pieces, but then he got in this very unpleasant position. So, but I feel, yes, maybe it suits my style. Just 960, maybe it suits my style.
Creativity. Levon, we've been talking about how one of the differences in freestyle chess and standard chess is also in this mini match format. Because in standard chess, very often there can be openings once a player takes a lead in the match where you can actually shut down the game. We've seen that happen so many times. But in freestyle chess, you're guaranteed a game. The match is just never over till it's over.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And yesterday's Magnus' game showed it. It seemed so natural and, you know, so neutralizing with these queens in the center and everything, and then suddenly things started going very wrong. So yeah, you really have to spend a lot of time in the opening in this game.
That's what even Peter's been saying, that perhaps 90 minutes is not enough.
Yes, and one thing I would like to highlight, I don't know if you guys have noticed it, it was the very first, it's kind of history, because it was the first classical freestyle chess game that really had an intriguing endgame. So far in the first 2 days, everything was over after move 4. We were speculating after move 10 that, yeah, there is so much action. Do you really feel like reaching an endgame in freestyle chess is kind of a miracle, because you have to survive so many things to get there?
No, for sure, for sure. It does feel strange. I mean, that, but it's also felt like not really an endgame, yeah, because this pawn on g6, I mean, you don't have a king. So, but yes, of course, I mean, the positions are so interesting and so weird that it's a real joy.
We actually felt that today's starting position was a really, really complex one, perhaps the most challenging that we've seen. What was your first impression when you saw the position?
Okay, well, I played e4, and I think after e5, knight g3, Fabiano started thinking. And then I went and saw that Magnus played g4.
The grub.
Yeah, and then I kind of thought to myself, okay, the position is full of surprises. I should, you know, I should watch out. Yeah, because maybe g4 is a decent move, yeah?
It is decent,
Yeah,
but e4 is better.
Yeah, e4 certain, but then Magnus shocked us by going for the Danish gambit, yeah? g4, e5, knight g3, f6, d4. It was something of a different planet, no?
Idea, d4 takes knight b3 somewhere, yeah? This is what he played?
You
He
want
never
to
took
follow
on
up with
d4.
c3
Oh,
even,
wow.
yeah, to really sacrifice.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but Nodirbek was like a gentleman, yeah, that he only took ed4 at the moment when Magnus played f3, so that, okay, let's have fair play.
Exactly, Levon. We're talking a lot about the chess. How have you been enjoying your stay here at the Weissenhaus Resort overall?
Oh, it's wonderful. I mean, it's an ideal environment for chess, you know. There are fireplaces, there is nature, and Peter Lecko. What else can a person ask for? And his wonderful stories. Yesterday, I think we spent about 4 hours having dinner. The dinner finished in 1 hour, and for 3 hours we were just so thrilled to listen to Peter's stories. Yeah.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Thanks a lot, Levon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Levon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations to a big win, and good luck for tomorrow's game.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Lev.
guys.
Levon Aronian with quite the strategic masterpiece, the concept of playing around that bishop on d4. Yes. You allow a piece of your opponent to the strongest, at least visually the strongest square on the board, and then eventually just play around it and manage to get a strong hold on the position and never let go of it. Peter, I see you're still smiling and really happy. You're remembering the dinner as well.
Well, yes, I'm remembering the dinner as well, but I'm remembering what Levon said, and I just want to bring that position one more time because we haven't been seeing too much of this game at that certain moment. If we can get it, yes. And then Levon highlighted that this bishop e3 to d2, this is such a common theme, this is so natural. Well, if you are a 2800 player, it is natural. On the other hand, there are so many arguments to be said that what do you keep that life which hits the rook hits the g1 square, so this diagonal and the bishop will be parked on d4. It shows some very deep chess understanding.
Yeah.
And then also how masterfully made sure that that knight on e7 will never ever reach the game. Let me go to this g6 moment. Yes, it was like g5, Fabiano was fighting like a lion with knight g8, just give me some chance of getting that f6 square for my knight, and then Levon plays g6, and after rook c7 he plays rook c4. Okay, we talked about Magnus's game looking like a symphony, looking back, yeah, because it had its purpose. When I look at this game, I get the same impression.
Yes, and I think, you know, very often we talk about brilliancies when it comes to tactics, when it comes to sacrifices, but there are really these positional masterpieces that teach us so much more about chess, about how to place your pieces, how to play against your opponent's pieces. And not everything that shines is gold, like that bishop on d4, which perhaps should have been traded off, was the one move that cost Fabi so much. So really a nicely executed game. These are the kind of games that you study for understanding plans in chess, positional concepts in chess. I completely agree with what you said in the interview with Lev, that you can write a whole book about this concept of allowing that bishop on d4.
Yes, exactly. All these nuances, these small finesses, those things are making the great players even greater. Yeah, and when we suddenly get the chance to see that in a model game and then also explained by the players, my heart is shining. I just, you know, because I feel like chess is so rich and we can talk about finesses. That's one of the highlights for me all the time.
Absolutely, and with that, day one of the semi-finals is in the books, and we've had 4 decisive games, 4 action-packed games. Let's bring up our results, and this is how the day went. 2 wins with the white pieces in the semi-finals, and in the lower bracket we saw 2 decisive wins with the black pieces there in dominating style for Alireza and Vincent, where it was all eyes on the semis, and Magnus, Levon getting 1 foot in towards the finals. Fabiano-Caruana, Nodirbek have to strike back. And of course, like we said, Peter, that in this format, you will have a game. The players will have their chance. So it's going to be a lot of fun as Fabi and Nodirbek also start with the white pieces. We can expect a big fight tomorrow.
Yes, just as when Magnus got massacred in this wonderful endgame by Alireza in the first game, and we talked about it, yes, but in freestyle chess, in Fischer random chess, bouncing back with the white pieces is so much more easier is an overstatement because it's very difficult, but you don't have those opening struggles, yeah, that black with a good opening, with a very solid opening approach and great understanding, knowing all the nuances, can simply neutralize the opponent. Yeah, here get a game, and knowing Nodirbek and knowing Fabiano, what they have been showing so far in the tournament, no matter how well Levon and Magnus played today, they can't be sure about reaching the final because these 2 extraordinary players will be determined to bounce back tomorrow.
Yeah, you get the kind of positions where either player can go wrong, and they have to think from early on. And we're just loving this chess action, where we as commentators also for the very first time have to actually start thinking from move 1, breaking it down. It's like we're all on the same stage with the audience, with the fans watching, trying to figure it out. And finally, of course, we're going to hand the floor over to Niklas. Niklas, what was your big takeaway from this day 1 of semifinals?
Thank you, Tanya. It's been a great day of chess with 4 decisive games, and what really stood out to me, how different the different games went. We saw very different structures. We saw between Aronian-Caruana almost a normal position at some point with some really deep positional concepts there, avoiding the bishop trade and then giving black the c-file, but not allowing any entries. And Magnus, that was just a wild game in a way, that a structure I had never seen before. And Magnus even didn't know what was going on. Suddenly he realized he was winning and he took the point home. And then some really powerful displays by Firouzja and Vincent, both winning their games with the black pieces. I'm looking forward to tomorrow because I think somebody will strike back and force a tiebreak. We have 4 games where one player has to win on demand to force a tiebreak and to stay in the match, and you don't want to miss it. Tomorrow at 1 p.m, same time, same place, as Tanya likes to say. It's been a great joy with you two guys today.
It's been a lot of fun, and also Magnus calling 1G4 the Grob. It is the name for the standard chess opening, and we've been talking about this so much as well. We'll be seeing a lot more of that fun coming up. And of course, there's a lot of fun on social media because our big giveaway is on, and we'll have that up in just a moment for you. So don't forget to get creative, get wacky with your answers there, and drop us a freestyle rap. It has to be on freestyle, as long or as short as you like. Tweet using the hashtag freestyle chess, and you could win. One of you, one lucky winner, will win this very cool set of playing cards with the photos and the signatures and the autographs of all the great players who are playing here, including the world champion, including the world #1, and they all will be back in action tomorrow. We will see you then.
Day 4, marking the second day of the quarterfinals at the Freestyle Chess Greatest of All Time Challenge in Weissenhaus, has begun. It's now more crucial than ever for the players to muster all their energy to advance to the semi-finals.
The outcome of the tournament is still very open. Players are very close to each other. Everything depends on, maybe on one day the one player is playing very good, and the other day the other player is in a better shape. So you cannot really predict who's going to win at the end.
This tournament is not only unique because of its exclusiveness, but also wants to make chess accessible and interesting for everybody, and not only the chess community.
It's amazing to be here and to meet all these amazing players. I can see how they play, their movements, and how they plan. When I finish my experience here, I think I will be also a grandmaster of chess. Kidding.
Today, once again, Fabiano-Caruana secures a victory against Gukesh Domaraju. Nodirbek Abdusatorov and Ding Liren are playing to a draw. Levon Aronian wins against Vincent Keimer.
I absolutely love it. It brings the excitement back in the game of chess, I think, for most of us. I mean, even when I was playing badly in the start, the rapid section, I was still enjoying it immensely.
Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja have the same score and are playing a tiebreaker. It's the most exciting game of the evening. In the end, Magnus, the greatest of all time, makes it into the semi-finals as he defeats Alireza Firouzja.
It's absolutely exhausting, but I think that's the way it's supposed to be. Chess to me is mainly a sport, and it's not supposed to be easy on the players. But it's really hard. It's really hard work.
And once again, an exciting day at Weissenhaus draws to a close. Be sure not to miss the semi-finals at freestylechess.com. 3 questions on Levon Aronian. Why is rest so important during the tournament?
It's a very demanding game, especially, freestyle chess, where you have to think from move 1. The pressure is always there, we're not used to that so much. So we love this, but it's very stressful at the same time.
What do you like to do before and after an important game?
Before the games, what I mostly do is, maybe play some bullet games, solve some chess tactics, walk around, listen to music. So generally something light, because I believe that preparation should be done before the tournament starts.
What advice do you give to young chess players?
The most important thing to remember that not, I mean, those best players in the world are not really some aliens. We're all simple people. Just we worked hard, and we loved the game, and you know, we had good advices throughout our career, and we're willing to sacrifice a lot of things in our life. So it's important to have this understanding that you cannot do everything. If you want to become a world champion or a very good chess player, there are some aspects of your life have to be dedicated to this goal.
Stay tuned